drift back. Farther back than the pyramids, farther than the caves of Lascaux, past the ice ages and the woolly mammoths, past the first flickering campfires of the savannah. Let your mind dissolve the cities, the roads, and the open plains of the modern world. Let us return to the deep, drowning well of time, to the Miocene epoch 20 million years ago. Imagine the Earth not as a patchwork of nations, but as a single, breathing lung. In this ancient era, the African continent is not the golden, sun-baked grassland we know today. It is a world swallowed by chlorophyll. From the Atlantic coast to the edges of the Indian Ocean, a continuous, unbroken canopy stretches like a verdant ocean, rippling in the prehistoric winds. This is the Green Cathedral. It is a world of emerald light and dappled shadows, a place where the sun is shattered into a million distinct fragments before it ever touches the ground. The air here is thick, heavy with the humidity of a planet that has not yet known the biting cold of the coming ice. It smells of fermenting fruit, of wet bark, of the rich, cloying scent of orchids blooming in the dark, and the ozone tang of sudden, violent thunderstorms. Here, in this vertical kingdom, silence is a physical weight, broken only by the chaotic symphony of life, the screech of a prehistoric macaw, the buzz of insects the size of a human hand, and the rustle of leaves as something heavy moves through the upper branches. In this world, the horizon does not exist. There is only the green above and the dark below. And it is here, suspended in the three-dimensional lattice of the trees, that our story begins. Not with a step, but with a grip. Our ancestors in this epoch, creatures like Proconsul or the early Dryopithecines, are the absolute masters of this suspended realm. Picture them, not as half-formed men, but as perfect beings of their own time. They are the architects of the Canopy, their bodies designed by millions of years of evolutionary refinement to defy gravity, not by fighting it, but by embracing it. To understand them, we must first understand the world that held them. The trees of the Miocene were titans, mahogany and fig trees with trunks as wide as houses, rising distinct and pillar-like from the gloom of the forest floor, spreading their crowns into a tangled highway distinct from the earth. For these ancestors, the ground was a foreign planet. The floor of the forest was a place of shadow and terror, prowled by the ancestors of leopards, bear dogs, and strange saber-toothed creodonts. Safety, life, and joy were found only in the heights, and so, the body of the ancestor was a reflection of this vertical imperative. Look closely at their hands. They are the first miracle of our lineage. Long before the human hand would hold a spear, a pen, or a smartphone, it was designed as a hook. The fingers are long, curved like the ribs of a bird, capable of wrapping entirely around a thick branch. The skin of the palms is thick, etched with deep friction ridges, fingerprints that provide a grip strong enough to support the creature's entire body weight. When they moved, they did not walk. They flowed. They possessed a form of locomotion that was a fluid dance, a swinging rhythm that turned the terrifying drop below into a mere backdrop. The wrist was a marvel of rotation, far more flexible than that of the monkeys that came before them. It allowed the hand to swivel, to adjust, to find purchase on a branch at any angle. This was the era of the power grip. There was no need yet for the delicate precision grip we use to thread a needle. The world was made of thick boughs and heavy fruits. The thumb was short, staying out of the way, allowing the 4 long fingers to act as a seamless locking clamp. In the silence of the canopy, the sound of their movement was rhythmic, the slap of skin on bark, the creak of wood, the soft release, and the slap again. But the adaptation went deeper than the hand. It was etched into the very architecture of the spine. In the modern human, the spine is a source of constant fragility, a column of coins struggling to balance a heavy head against the pull of gravity. But in the green cathedral, the spine was a bridge. It was stiff, sturdy, and short. Because our ancestors spent their lives horizontally, their torsos parallel to the ground as they moved on all fours along broad branches or hanging vertically as they swung, their spines were not under the compressive crushing force that plagues us today. The vertebrae were locked together more tightly, creating a stable beam that could support the organs as they hung suspended. There was no lower back pain here. The lumbar curve, that deep inward arch at the bottom of your back that screams after a long day of standing, did not yet exist. The back was a single, gentle arch, like the string of a bow. It was a structure at peace with its environment. The discs between the vertebrae were thick and hydrated, never squashed by the relentless vertical load of walking upright. In this arboreal Eden, the back was a simple, elegant solution to the problem of suspension. Life in the green cathedral was dictated by the harvest. The forest was a generous mother, provided one had the skill to navigate her. The diet was a kaleidoscope of soft fruits, young leaves, and the sweet, milky sap of flowering trees. This abundance shaped the face of the ancestor. Their snouts were shorter than the baboons of the savannah, their eyes facing directly forward, granting them the stereoscopic vision necessary to judge distances in the chaotic geometry of the branches. To miss a branch was to die. Therefore, the brain was already beginning to prioritize visual processing, mapping the complex, shifting roots of the canopy. Imagine a morning in this epoch. The mist clings to the high branches, cold and damp. The sun begins to burn through, sending shafts of gold piercing into the gloom. The troop wakes in their sleeping nests, platforms woven from bent branches and leaves, high in the forks of the giant trees. They uncurl, shaking the dew from their fur. This fur is dense, a barrier against the insects and the damp chill of the rainforest morning, perhaps dark in color to blend with the shadows of the bark. The first movement of the day is social. Before they eat, they touch. Grooming is the language of the Miocene. Long, dark fingers comb through the hair of a mate or a child, picking out debris, soothing tensions, cementing the bonds that keep the group together. This tactile connection is the foundation of our society today, a biological memory of the comfort found in the touch of another in the safety of the trees. As the heat rises, the movement begins. They travel not on the ground, but through the arboreal highway. They know every tree, every reliable root. They know which branches are rot-resistant and which will snap under weight. They are masters of physics, intuitively understanding leverage and momentum. Watch as a male approaches a gap in the canopy. The next tree is 10 feet away. He does not jump, he sways. He grips a thin, pliable outer branch of his current tree and leans back, using his body weight to bend the branch like a catapult. At the apex of the swing, he releases, flying silent and weightless across the void, catching the foliage of the neighboring tree with a practiced, effortless grace. It is a ballet of survival, performed without a safety net. The concept of upright existed, but it was different. Occasionally, to reach a particularly succulent fig hanging at the very tip of a branch, the ancestor would stand. They would rise up on their hind legs, gripping a branch above their head for balance, their feet grasping the wood below. This was assisted bipedalism, a tripod of stability. In these fleeting moments, the body stretched out, the organs shifting, the spine momentarily vertical. It was a foreshadowing, a whisper of the future, but it was not yet a way of life. It was a tool, like a reaching stick, used for a specific task and then discarded as they returned to the safety of all fours. The feet of these ancestors were effectively a second pair of hands. The big toe diverged widely from the others, like a thumb. It could grip, grasp, and manipulate. The foot did not act as a lever for pushing off the ground, but as a clamp. The sole was soft and sensitive, able to feel the texture of the wood, to detect the slightest vibration of a predator climbing the trunk below. There was no arch in the foot as we know it. The foot was flat and mobile, designed to mold itself around the cylindrical shape of a branch. To walk on flat ground with such feet would have been awkward and rolling, a waddling gait on the outer edges of the soles. But in the trees, they were perfect. Deep in the genetic code of these creatures, the blueprint for humanity was sleeping. But it was a blueprint drafted for a different purpose. The shoulder joint, for instance, had migrated to the side of the body, unlike the downward-facing shoulders of ground-dwelling dogs or cats. This allowed the arm to reach up, out, and behind, a range of motion intended for swinging from branch to branch. Millions of years later, this same shoulder mobility would allow a descendant to throw a spear, to paint a cave wall, to pitch a baseball. But here, in the green silence, it was simply the mechanics of flight without wings. The relationship between mother and infant in this world was one of intense, physical adhesion. A human baby today is born helpless, unable to lift its head. But the infant of the Miocene was born with a survival instinct that we still see in the frantic grasp of a newborn's hand, the palmar grasp reflex. In the Canopy, a mother could not carry her baby in her arms. She needed all four limbs to move. The baby had to cling. From the moment of birth, the infant buried its tiny hook-like fingers into the mother's fur, locking on with a grip of steel. The mother moved through the swaying heights, jumping, swinging, and the infant rode the living roller coaster, safe in the tactile anchor of the fur. This bond, the clinging child and the mobile mother, was the center of their emotional universe. As the day wears on, the heat of the Miocene sun becomes intense, but the Canopy offers a permanent shade. They rest in the midday gloom, digesting the fibrous plants. It is a slow life, a life of digestion and observation. There is no need to run down prey. There is no need to migrate across vast distances. The forest provides. The green cathedral is a provident god, offering shelter, food, and water caught in the hollows of leaves. However, even in paradise, there is fear. Nightfall in the forest is a time of absolute darkness. The ancestors cluster together in the highest, thinnest branches, places where the heavy predators of the night, the snakes and the creeping carnivores, cannot easily reach. They huddle for warmth, a single mass of breathing fur. The sounds of the night are terrifying, the roar of archaic cats, the scream of dying prey on the forest floor below. This fear of the dark, this primal relief at the coming of the dawn, is a legacy we still carry. It was forged here, in the long, blind nights of the Miocene, where the ground was death and the tree was life. But the earth is not static. While our ancestors swung in the eternal green, the planet was slowly, imperceptibly changing. Far away, tectonic plates were grinding against one another. Mountains were rising, redirecting the winds. Ocean currents were shifting, altering the distribution of heat around the globe. The great unified forest that stretched across Africa was beginning to feel a thirst. The rains were becoming slightly less predictable. The dry seasons were stretching a few days longer each year. The green cathedral, which seemed eternal to those who lived within it, was beginning to fray at the edges. The gaps between the trees were widening. The continuous canopy, the superhighway of the ancestors, was beginning to break. In the vast expanse of geological time, the clock was ticking toward a moment of crisis. But for now, in this chapter of our history, we are still innocent. We are still children of the leaves. Our backs are straight and strong, unburdened by the weight of the sky. Our feet are hands that hold us safe. We do not yet know the pain of a slipped disc, the ache of fallen arches, or the exhaustion of a marathon. We do not yet know the harshness of the open sun, or the vulnerability of standing tall on two legs in a flat land. We are suspended in the womb of the forest, waiting for the birth of humanity. The world is green, the fruit is sweet, and we are perfectly, blissfully adapted to a home that is about to disappear. The silence of the forest is deep, but if you listen closely to the wind moving through the ancient boughs, you can hear the whisper of the change to come, the slow, drying wind that will eventually blow the cathedral down and force us, trembling, onto the unforgiving ground. The earth is not a stillness. It is a slow, grinding conversation between rock, water, and air. While our ancestors swung through the eternal twilight of the Miocene canopy, believing their world of fruit and leaves to be a permanent state of existence, the planet was preparing to rewrite the very definition of home. It began far away, in the slow, violent collision of tectonic plates. The Indian subcontinent, drifting northwards like a slow-motion raft, slammed into the belly of Asia. The Himalayas rose, piercing the atmosphere, disrupting the ancient wind patterns that had circulated moisture around the globe for eons. These new, jagged peaks stripped the rain from the winds, casting a long, invisible shadow over the world. Simultaneously, the global thermostat began to turn. The warm greenhouse conditions of the early Miocene began to fade, replaced by a creeping chill. The polar ice caps, once distant and diminished, began to expand, locking away the planet's precious freshwater in vaults of white silence. As the ice grew, the air dried. A great thirst began to settle over the African continent. It was not a sudden catastrophe. There was no single day of fire or ash, but rather a slow, relentless withering, a drying out of the world that spanned thousands of generations. To an individual ape living in these times, the change would have been imperceptible, hidden within the variance of seasons. A dry season that lasted a week longer than usual. A favorite fruit tree that failed to blossom. A stream that turned to mud and then to dust. But over the deep time of geology, the effect was devastating. The green cathedral, that seamless ocean of leaves that had cradled our lineage, began to fragment. Picture the canopy from above. For millions of years it had been a solid blanket of green. Now tears began to appear in the fabric. The great forests, starved of moisture, began to retreat to the river valleys and the highlands. In their wake, a new and alien landscape rushed in to fill the void. The grasslands. This was the dawn of the mosaic environment, a patchwork world where islands of dense woodland were separated by terrifying, sun-drenched oceans of tall grass. The easy highway of the trees, the three-dimensional lattice that had allowed our ancestors to travel for miles without ever touching the earth, was severed. The branches no longer touched. To move from one grove of fruit trees to the next, to find a mate, to seek water, the inhabitants of the Canopy faced a crisis that was both existential and geographical. They could stay in their shrinking islands of green, dwindling in number as the resources vanished, trapped in a starving isolation. Or they could do the unthinkable. They could descend. Imagine the psychological weight of that first descent. For millions of years, the ground was a concept synonymous with death. It was the dark basement of the world, a place of rotting vegetation, swarming insects, and things that slithered. It was the domain of the saber-toothed cat, the hyena, and the primitive bear dog. To leave the trees was to abandon the fortress. Yet hunger is a persuasive master. Visualize a specific dawn, perhaps 5 or 6 million years ago. The air is cooler than it used to be, crisp and dry. An ancestor, let us call him a pioneer of necessity, sits on the lowest branch of a sycamore fig. He is hungry. The grove he lives in has been stripped bare. Across a span of 200 yards of waving golden grass, another patch of forest stands, dark and promising. He can smell the ripening fruit on the wind. Between him and that salvation lies the open ground. He hesitates. His body is a map of arboreal adaptations. His arms are long and heavy, built for pulling. His legs are short and bowed. His feet are grasping hands, designed to curl around rounded wood, not to flatten against hard soil. He looks down. The distance is not great, perhaps only a few feet to the dirt, but it represents a crossing of worlds. Finally, driven by the empty ache in his belly, he drops. The sensation of the earth against his soles is alien. It is hard, unyielding, and uneven. Dead leaves crunch loudly under his weight, a sound that triggers an instant spike of adrenaline. In the trees, movement was silent. Here, every step is a broadcast of his position. He drops onto all fours, knuckles grazing the rough grit of the savanna floor. He is a creature of the air, now drowning in the grass. He moves awkwardly. His anatomy, perfect for the vertical world, is a liability here. His pelvis is long and stiff, forcing him to hunch. To look forward, he must crane his neck back painfully. But the grass is the true enemy. It rises above his head, a wall of gold and amber stalks that blocks his vision completely. In the trees he could see for miles. He was the watcher in the tower. Now he is blind. He is submerged in a sea of stems. Every rustle in the grass nearby could be the wind, or it could be the leopard Dinophilus, a predator perfectly evolved to hunt in this very terrain. The fear is a cold knot in his chest. In the Canopy, safety was always up, just a quick scramble to a higher branch. But here, on the flat earth, there is no up. There is only the horizontal plane of danger. He scuttles forward, heart hammering against his ribs. He stops. He needs to see. He needs to know what lies ahead. Instinctively, he does what he would do in the trees to reach a high fruit. He shifts his weight back. He presses his knuckles into the dirt and levers himself upward. His gluteal muscles strain, unaccustomed to the load. His knees wobble. Slowly, shakily, he rises onto his hind legs. His head breaks the surface of the grass. Suddenly the world expands. The claustrophobia of the stalks vanishes, replaced by the vast, terrifying, and beautiful horizon of the African rift. He sees the distant patch of trees. He sees the herd of primitive antelope grazing warily. And perhaps, 80 yards away, he sees the golden flicker of a predator's flank moving away from him. He drops back down instantly, hiding in the grass. but the information he gained in that brief moment of standing was priceless. It was the difference between walking blindly into death and navigating around it. This was the beginning. It was not a sudden transformation into a striding walker. It was a game of peekaboo played for the highest stakes imaginable. For thousands of years, this was the dance of our ancestors: scuttle on all fours, rise to scan, drop to hide, stand to see, crouch to survive. But the savannah was not just a place of danger, it was a place of opportunity, and the upright posture offered gifts beyond mere vigilance. The sun in this new, open world was a relentless hammer. In the forest, the leaves acted as a parasol, keeping the ancestors cool. Out here, with no shade, the midday sun struck the back of a quadruped with full force, heating the entire length of the spine and the vital organs housed beneath. However, the ancestor who stood up performed a miraculous feat of thermodynamics. By aligning the body vertically, he reduced the surface area exposed to the direct overhead rays. Instead of the sun beating down on the entire back, it struck only the head and shoulders. Furthermore, the air at ground level is stagnant and hot, trapped by the grass. But a few feet up, where a standing hominid's head would be, there is a breeze. By standing, our ancestors lifted their delicate brains into the cooling currents of the wind. This thermal advantage meant that while the leopard and the antelope had to rest in the shade during the hottest hours of the day, the upright ape could keep moving. We became creatures of the noon, claiming a temporal niche that others abandoned. As the epochs ground on, the landscape continued to dry. The gaps between the trees grew wider. The 200 yards became a mile. The mile became 10. The commute became a migration. The selection pressure intensified. The ancestors who found it difficult to stand, whose backs were too rigid or whose hips were too narrow to support the vertical load, fell behind. They were eaten, or they starved, or they retreated into the dwindling forests to remain as apes, ghosts of a lineage that did not choose the path of fire and stone. But those with a subtle shift in the code of life, a slightly broader pelvis, a slightly more curved spine, a toe that didn't grip quite as hard, found that they could stand longer. They could walk a few steps before dropping back down, and then a few steps more. This transition was not merely physical, it was deeply social. In the trees, a mother could carry her infant on her back, the baby would cling to her fur. But on the ground, clinging was dangerous. If the mother had to run, a clinging baby might fall or unbalance her. And as our brains began their slow, agonizing expansion, our infants became born more helpless, less able to cling. Imagine a mother in this transitional world. She needs to cross the open plain to reach a water hole. She cannot walk on all fours and carry her helpless infant effectively. She has no pockets, no slings. She needs her arms. So she stands up. She cradles the infant against her chest with one arm, leaving the other free to forage or throw a stone at a jackal. The upright posture liberated the hands from the duty of locomotion. This was the great trade-off. We gave up speed, we gave up stability, but we gained the ability to carry. We became the carriers. We carried food to our mates, breaking the mouth-to-mouth existence of other animals. We carried weapons. We carried our future in our arms. The act of carrying cemented the bipedal habit. It turned a momentary posture into a permanent way of life. Yet, let us not romanticize the pain of this transition. The fossil record is a library of bones, and those bones tell a story of immense physical stress. This new way of moving required a total architectural overhaul of the body, done on the fly, without a blueprint. The lower back, designed to act as a suspension bridge, was being forced to act as a pillar. The vertebrae crunched together. The knees, complex hinges meant for crouching, were suddenly asked to lock straight and bear the full weight of the torso. The nights in this new world were different too. In the green cathedral, the night was dark, but embraced by branches. On the savanna, the night was a vast, open dome of stars, beautiful but exposed. Our ancestors, now committed to the ground, had to find new ways to sleep. Perhaps they built crude nests in the lower branches of isolated trees, or huddled in rock crevices, shivering as the open-air temperature plummeted. The silence of the forest was replaced by the terrifying acoustics of the plains, the whoop of the hyena carrying for miles, the rumble of a lion's chest vibrating through the ground itself. In this crucible of fear and exposure, the bond between the tribe members deepened. Alone, a slow, upright ape is a snack. Together, standing tall, bristling with sticks and stones, shouting into the dark, they were a force. The upright posture allowed them to appear larger, to loom over the grass, to present a united front. And so, the forest receded into memory. The lush, three-dimensional Eden was lost, replaced by a hard, flat reality. We were cast out of the garden, not by a deity, but by the indifference of geology. We were refugees of the climate, forced to adapt to a world that did not want us. But in that loss, we found our destiny. We left the safety of the leaves and stood up to face the horizon. We traded the security of the grip for the freedom of the step. As the generations passed, the memory of the trees remained only in the way our infants grip a finger, or the way we startle when we dream of falling. We were no longer children of the canopy. We were the walkers of the wasteland, the watchers in the grass, the upright citizens of a harsh new earth. The ground was hard, and the sun was hot, and the predators were hungry. But we were standing, and once we stood, we could see forever. We could see the path that would eventually lead out of Africa, across the frozen tundras, and to the very edges of the world. The Eden was withered, but the earth was ours to walk. In the quiet theater of the Pliocene, where the heat rises in shimmering waves from the cracked earth of the Rift Valley, a silent war is being waged. It is not a war of tooth and claw, nor of predator and prey, but a war against a fundamental force of the universe, gravity. For millions of years, gravity was a manageable constant, a force that pulled our ancestors downward, yes, but one that was countered by the strong, grasping hands that held the branches above. The body hung. The spine was a hammock. But when the trees retreated and the ancestors stepped onto the unforgiving floor of the savanna, the relationship with gravity changed violently. It was no longer a force to hang from. It was a crushing weight to be borne. To understand the magnitude of this shift, we must look inward, past the skin and the muscle, to the white, silent architecture of the skeleton. Specifically, we must look to the center of the body, to the ring of bone that serves as the chaotic intersection of the upper and lower worlds, the pelvis. In the history of life on Earth, few bones have undergone a transformation as radical, as rapid, or as consequential as this singular basin. It is the architectural cornerstone of the human experiment. Visualize, if you will, the pelvis of our cousin, the chimpanzee, or indeed the common ancestor we left behind in the shadowy canopy. Their pelvis is a marvel of climbing efficiency. It is long, narrow, and tall, extending up the back like a flat, elongated paddle. It slides along the spine, a sleek blade of bone designed for a creature that spends its life on all fours or suspending itself vertically in the trees. In this quadrupedal design, the internal organs, the heavy, fluid-filled machinery of digestion and reproduction, hang suspended from the spine like laundry on a line. The pelvis has no need to support them. It is merely an anchor for the powerful legs that propel the ape up the trunk of a fig tree. But when the ancestor stood up, everything changed. Suddenly, the spine was no longer a horizontal beam. It was a vertical pillar. The heavy, chaotic weight of the intestines, the stomach, the liver, and the heart was no longer hanging harmlessly. It was plummeting. Gravity dragged the viscera downward, threatening to crush the lower body and spill the contents of the abdomen. The old, flat, blade-like pelvis of the ape was useless for this new orientation. It offered no support, no floor for the organs to rest upon. And so, the blind, unconscious sculptor of evolution began its work. It was not a change that happened in a single generation, or even 1,000. It was a slow, agonizing process of bending and breaking, a gradual remodeling of the bone performed by the ruthless chisel of natural selection. Silent errors in the code of life, mutations that would have been grotesque in a tree dweller, became the blueprints for survival on the plains. The bone began to twist. The long, tall blades of the ilium, the upper wings of the pelvis, began to shorten. They grew wider, flaring out to the sides, curving inward like the petals of a fossilized flower. The sacrum, the triangular keystone at the base of the spine, widened and tilted. The entire structure was compressed, squashed from top to bottom, and expanded from side to side. It transformed from a long, flat slide into a broad, deep bowl. This bowl was the great salvation. It became the floor of the torso. For the first time in history, a primate could walk with its guts resting comfortably within a bony cradle. The intestines nestled into the curve of the ilium. The bladder found its home in the deep basin. We carried our own softness within a fortress of calcium. This restructuring allowed the torso to sit vertically, stacked neatly above the legs, balancing the heavy chest and head with an efficiency that defied the odds. But the reshaping of the pelvis was about far more than just holding the organs. It was a masterclass in mechanical leverage, a solution to the impossible physics of bipedal walking. Walking on two legs is, in essence, a controlled fall. It is a state of perpetual imbalance. When you lift your right leg to take a step, your body effectively loses half its support. Gravity instantly tries to pull your unsupported right side down toward the earth. If you were a chimpanzee trying to walk on two legs, this is exactly what would happen. You would have to lurch your entire upper body to the left, over the standing leg, to avoid falling over. This creates the waddle, the side-to-side, energy-inefficient gait of an ape on the ground. To create the smooth, enduring stride of the human, the body needed a stabilizer. It needed a mechanism to keep the pelvis level, even when one leg was in the air. This is where the genius of the new pelvic shape revealed itself. By widening the bowl and flaring the hip bones to the side, evolution changed the position of the gluteal muscles. In the ape, the gluteal muscles are positioned almost entirely on the back of the leg. They are the engines of propulsion, firing to push the animal forward or up a tree. But in the early hominids, as the pelvic blades wrapped around the side of the body, they took the gluteal muscles with them. The gluteus medius and gluteus minimus migrated from being pure propulsors to being abductors, muscles that pull the leg away from the midline. This sounds like a minor anatomical footnote, but it is the secret to your every step. Picture an ancestor. Let us call her by the name we gave her bones, Lucy, or perhaps a name lost to time, the Walker. She stands on the volcanic ash of Laetoli. She lifts her left foot. Instantly, gravity grabs her left hip, trying to drag it down. But just as quickly, the gluteus medius on her right side, the standing side, fires. It contracts, pulling the pelvis tight against the thigh bone, locking the hip level. It acts as a counterbalance, a biological guy wire that prevents the collapse. Because of this widened, wrapped pelvis, she does not waddle. She does not lurch. She simply swings her leg forward, her hips remaining level, her upper body quiet and dignified. She places her heel down, rolls through the arch, and pushes off with her toe. It is a motion of incredible efficiency, a pendulum swing that captures the energy of gravity and recycles it. This mechanism, born from the twisting of the bone, allowed her to walk not just for 100 yards, but for 10 miles. It turned the primate into a traveler. Consider the sensory experience of this new body. The walker feels a new sensation in her hips, a tightness, a tension that was never there before. She feels the heavy, rhythmic thud of her heels striking the ground, the shock traveling up the tibia, through the knee, and dissipating into the thick, spongy bone of the new pelvic bowl. She feels the sun on her chest, which is now lifted high, open to the breeze. She is no longer looking at the dirt. She is looking at the horizon. The broad basin of her hips has become the fulcrum upon which the entire upper body pivots. However, nature is a transactional merchant. It never gives a gift without demanding a price. The expansion of the pelvis for walking created a geometric conflict that would haunt our species to this very day. We call it the obstetrical dilemma, but to the ancestors it was simply the terror of birth. Here lies the cruel irony of our evolution. At the exact moment natural selection was favoring a shorter, broader pelvis to support walking, it was also favoring a larger, more complex brain to survive the social and intellectual challenges of the savanna. We needed a wider pelvis to walk, but a narrower birth canal was the structural result of the bowl shape. The birth canal, the bony ring through which the infant must pass, became a twisting, turning labyrinth. In our quadrupedal ancestors, the birth canal is a straight, wide tube. The infant ape passes through easily, facing forward, requiring little rotation. A chimpanzee mother can often reach down, pull her infant out, and clean it within minutes, all in relative isolation. But for the walker, and even more so for her descendants, birth became an ordeal of geometry. The entrance to the human birth canal is wide from side to side, matching the shape of the infant's head, but the exit is wide from front to back. This means the infant must perform a complex gymnastic maneuver during labor, entering the pelvis facing sideways, then rotating 90 degrees to face the mother's spine before finally emerging. It is a tight, crushing fit. The head of the human infant is almost exactly the same size as the pelvic opening. There is no margin for error. This architectural bottleneck changed the very nature of human existence, because the pelvis could not expand indefinitely without destroying the efficiency of our walk, make the hips too wide, and the leverage fails. Evolution found a different solution. It evicted the fetus early. Human infants are born prematurely compared to other primates. They are born while their brains are still small enough to squeeze through the ring of bone, long before they are ready to survive on their own. A foal can stand within an hour. A human child cannot walk for a year. This fourth trimester, spent outside the womb, was the direct result of the pelvic compromise. It meant that human mothers were burdened with helpless infants for years, demanding a level of care and provisioning that reshaped our social structures. It forced us to bond, to share food, to create the concept of family and tribe, to protect the vulnerable young who were born too soon because the mother's hips could not grow any wider. Furthermore, the difficulty of the birth itself shattered the solitude of the primate mother. In the ancient forests, birth was likely a solitary act. But on the savanna, with a twisting birth canal and a helpless infant, a mother needed help. She needed a midwife, someone to catch the child, to untangle the cord, to guide the new life into the air. The danger of the pelvis forced us to rely on one another in our most vulnerable moments. Compassion, in a way, was born from the shape of a bone. As the millennia passed, the pelvis continued to refine its shape. It became thicker, more robust, scarring over with strong ligaments to hold the spine in place. We see the legacy of this adaptation in every skeleton dug from the earth. We see it in the skeleton of Homo erectus, the boy of Turkana, whose narrow hips suggest he was an endurance runner of unparalleled stamina. We see it in the Neanderthals, whose pelvises were wider, suggesting a different gait, a power walk suited for rough, icy terrain rather than the efficient jog of the African plains. And we feel it today in our own bodies. The bowl is still there, holding us up. But it is an imperfect solution. The connection between the spine and the pelvis, the sacroiliac joint, is a common source of pain. The sheer mechanical stress of transferring the weight of the entire upper body through this ring of bone onto two legs is immense. Lower back pain, hip fractures in the elderly, the agony of labor, these are the echoes of that ancient reconstruction. They are the receipts we still hold for the purchase of bipedalism. Yet, consider the majesty of the trade. Stand up. Feel the weight of your body settle into your hips. That sensation of stability, of being grounded, is the gift of the Pliocene sculptor. This basin of bone allowed us to leave the shrinking forests. It allowed us to carry water in ostrich eggshells across the desert. It allowed us to march out of Africa, step by rhythmic step, the gluteal muscles firing in perfect sequence, the pelvis swaying gently like a pendulum, carrying the human story to every corner of the globe. It is a silent witness, this pelvic girdle. It is a bridge between the quadrupedal past and the intellectual future. It is the cradle of the gut and the gateway of life. It is the bone that broke the horizontal plane and allowed us to become vertical, to become the pillar that connects the earth to the stars. In the deep silence of the body's history, the pelvis is the true hero, the bearer of the burden, the foundation of the human temple. If the pelvis is the foundation of the human temple, the quiet, bony basin that holds our history, then the spine is the spire that reaches for the heavens. It is the central axis of our existence, the mast upon which the sails of our muscles are rigged, the protective conduit for the lightning of our nerves. To understand the profound courage of the human body, we must trace the line of this bone, rising from the hips to the skull. It is a story not just of structure, but of a desperate, beautiful negotiation with gravity. Let us return to the silence of the deep past, to the days when the spine was a horizontal reality. In the murky waters of the Devonian seas, long before the first breath of air was taken, the spine began as a notochord, a stiff, fluid-filled rod running the length of a primitive fish. It was a simple structure, designed for undulation. It allowed the creature to swim, to push against the water in rhythmic waves. As life crawled onto land, the spine became a bridge. For hundreds of millions of years, through the reign of the amphibians, the reptiles, and the great mammals, the spine functioned under tension. Picture a suspension bridge, like the Golden Gate. The road deck hangs from cables. The forces are pulling it apart, keeping it taut. This was the spine of the quadruped. Whether it was a saber-toothed cat prowling the scrub or our own ape-like ancestor scampering along a branch, their spines were strung like bows between the pillars of their shoulders and hips. The internal organs hung from this bridge, swinging gently with every step. The vertebrae were shaped like spools, simple and uniform, designed to lock together and resist sagging. It was an architecture of immense stability, a design perfected by eons of trial and error in a world where down was merely the direction of the ground beneath 4 feet. But then came the great lifting. As the forests of Africa withered and the ancestors rose to face the tall grass, the rules of engineering were inverted. The bridge was forced to become a tower. Imagine taking a suspension bridge, turning it vertical, and trying to balance a heavy boulder on top of it. This was the challenge of bipedalism. The spine, once a tension structure, became a compression structure. It was no longer being pulled, it was being crushed. The weight of the head, the arms, the chest, and the heart suddenly bore down directly through the column of bone. A straight pillar, rigid and unyielding, would have been a disaster. If our ancestors had stood up with the straight, rod-like spine of a chimp, the impact of every step would have been catastrophic. Walking is a violent act. The heel strikes the ground with a force greater than body weight. This shock wave travels upward, through the shin, through the thigh, and into the torso. A straight spine would have transmitted this shock directly to the skull, rattling the brain and shattering the vertebrae under the relentless jackhammer rhythm of the stride. And so, the silent errors in the code of life, the random mutations that drift through the genome like seeds on the wind, began to accumulate. Nature, the blind architect, began to bend the pillar. It was not a sudden snapping of bone, but a slow, fluid warping over thousands of generations. The spine did not remain straight. It curled. It twisted. It sought a shape that could absorb the punishment of the earth. The result was the S-curve, a sinusoidal masterpiece that defines the human silhouette. It is a shape found in nature's most resilient structures, in the meander of a river, in the coil of a snake, in the wave of the ocean. By introducing curves, the spine became a spring. Trace the path of this spring with your mind's eye. It begins at the top, in the neck, the cervical spine. Here, the column curves inward, creating a hollow at the back of the neck. This was a critical adaptation for a creature that needed to look forward while standing upright. In a 4-legged animal, the head hangs forward from the shoulders, supported by massive neck muscles. But in us, the head balances precariously on top of the column. The cervical curve brings the head back, centering its weight directly over the hips. It allows us to scan the horizon without the exhausting effort of constantly craning our necks. It is the curve of vigilance, the curve of the watcher. Below the neck, the spine flows outward, rounding the upper back, the thoracic curve. This is the ancient curve, the primary arch we inherited from our fetal days and our ape ancestors. It creates the cavity for the lungs and heart, a protective cage of ribs that houses the engine of our endurance. It is the curve of breath, the expanding and contracting bellows that fueled our long marches across the continents. But the true revolution, the structural pivot that allowed us to conquer the ground, lies at the bottom. the lumbar curve. Here, in the small of the back, the spine sweeps aggressively inward again, mirroring the curve of the neck, but with far greater mass and consequence. This deep, hollow arch is unique to humans. No other primate possesses it to this degree. It is the lordosis, the sway that brings the upper body back over the pelvis. Without this lumbar curve, we would naturally tip forward. Gravity would constantly try to pull our noses into the dirt. To stand up straight without this curve, we would have to keep our knees permanently bent and our hip muscles constantly firing, burning precious energy. The exhausting Groucho walk of a chimpanzee trying to mimic a human. But the lumbar curve brings the center of gravity backward. It aligns the heavy torso directly over the acetabulum, the hip socket, and down through the knee and ankle. It created a vertical line of balance so perfect that when standing at rest, a human uses almost no muscular energy to remain upright. We are essentially locking our bones in place, stacking the blocks so neatly that gravity itself holds us together. We became efficient towers of bone, capable of standing for hours as we scanned for prey, or walking for days without collapse. However, this efficiency was bought with a terrifying fragility. We are, in architectural terms, a momentary impossibility. We are stacking vertebrae like a column of coins, separated only by soft, gel-filled cushions. These are the intervertebral discs, the unsung heroes of our vertical existence. Zoom in, closer than the eye can see, to the space between the bones. Here lies a biological marvel. The disc consists of a tough, fibrous outer ring, the annulus fibrosus, woven like the radial tires of a truck. Inside this ring sits the nucleus pulposus, a jelly-like substance that is mostly water. It is a remnant of our aquatic past, a tiny enclosed ocean that acts as a hydraulic shock absorber. When you take a step, the impact shutters up your leg. The spine compresses. The water inside the nucleus pushes outward against the fibrous ring, absorbing the energy. The spine literally shrinks. During the course of a single day, the relentless downward pull of gravity squeezes the water out of these discs. You are nearly half an inch shorter when you go to bed at night than when you woke up in the morning. While you sleep, horizontal and relieved of the burden, the discs soak up fluid from the surrounding tissues, re-inflating like sponges, resetting the spring for another day of survival. This daily cycle of compression and recovery is the rhythm of the human back. It is a tide that ebbs and flows with the sun. But the system is precarious. The lumbar vertebrae, those 5 massive bones at the bottom of the stack, bear the crushing weight of the entire upper body. In a quadruped, this weight is distributed. In us, it is concentrated. The pressure per square inch on the lower lumbar discs is immense. We asked a structure designed for tension to function under compression. We took a bridge and made it a pillar, and the pillar began to crack. This is the evolutionary duality written in our bones. The very adaptation that allowed us to run, to carry, and to stand tall is also the source of our greatest physical vulnerability. Back pain is not a disease, it is a legacy. It is the tax we pay for our hands. Imagine an ancestor, a Homo erectus male, moving across the Pleistocene landscape. He has just scavenged a heavy haunch of meat from a kill site. He swings it onto his shoulder. The weight is substantial, 60, maybe 70 pounds. As he walks, the load compresses his spine further. The lumbar curve deepens, the vertebrae pinching together at the back. He relies on the thick, rope-like muscles of his erector spinae to keep the column stable. He walks for 10 miles back to the safety of the tribe. With every step, the discs are squeezed. If he twists suddenly, perhaps to avoid a snake or to stumble over a root, the pressure becomes asymmetrical. The jelly inside the disc is pushed violently to one side. If the fibrous ring is weak, or if the years of heavy lifting have taken their fraying toll, the jelly can burst through. A herniation, a slipped disc. The pain is instant and blinding. The escaping fluid presses against the spinal nerve roots, the delicate wires that carry the signals of the legs. The ancestor collapses. In the harsh arithmetic of the Paleolithic, a bad back could be a death sentence. A hunter who cannot walk cannot eat. A gatherer who cannot bend cannot harvest. The tribe might wait for a day, maybe two. But the hunger of the group is a relentless clock. The fragility of the spine was a constant shadow over the lives of our forebears. A reminder that we were using a repurposed anatomy, a beta version of upright walking that was never fully debugged. And yet, despite the pain, the spine held. It held enough. It allowed us to do things no other animal could do. The S-curve acted as a shock absorber not just for walking, but for running. When we run, the forces are 3 times our body weight. The spine compresses and recoils, returning energy, acting like a pogo stick. This spring-loaded efficiency, combined with our cooling sweat and our long legs, made us the persistence hunters. We could chase an antelope until it collapsed from heat exhaustion, our spines absorbing the thousands of impacts that would have shattered a stiffer creature. The vertical spine also liberated the chest. In a galloping cheetah or a running dog, the front legs strike the ground together, compressing the rib cage. Their breathing is tied to their stride. They must take 1 breath per stride. They cannot decouple their lungs from their legs. But because our spine is vertical and our arms are free, our chest is not compressed by our gait. We can breathe at any rhythm we choose. We can pant. We can hold our breath. We can speak, we can sing, all while moving. The vertical spine created the pneumatic freedom necessary for the eventual development of complex language. We could control the air column because we weren't leaning on it. Consider the development of this curve in your own life. It is a journey that recapitulates the history of the species. When you were born, curled in the womb, your spine was a single, C-shaped curve. You were a quadruped in waiting. You had the spine of an ape. Then, at 3 or 4 months old, you began to lift your head. You lay on your belly, straining against gravity, strengthening the neck muscles. In this struggle, the cervical curve was born. You were reenacting the first moment an ancestor peered over the grass. Later, at a year old, you grasped the edge of a coffee table. You pulled yourself up on wobbly legs. You began to teeter, to balance. As you let go and took that first terrifying step, your lumbar muscles fired, pulling the lower back inward. The lordosis formed. You were becoming human. You were building the pillar, brick by brick, repeating the millions of years of evolution in a single quiet afternoon in a living room. But the memory of the quadruped never leaves us. It is there in the way we seek comfort. When the back aches, when the day is done, what do? We lie down. We curl up. We assume the fetal position. We return the spine to the C shape. We take the gravity off the stack. We let the discs drink. In the deepest stages of sleep, we are no longer upright citizens of the modern world. We are ancient creatures resting in the horizontal peace of the water or the tree. The history of the spine is also a history of the great mismatch. We evolved to walk, to move, to keep the spring loading and unloading. We did not evolve to sit. And yet, look at us now. We sit in chairs for 12 hours a day. We lock our hips at 90 degrees, flattening the lumbar curve. We hunch over screens, reversing the cervical curve, hanging the weight of the head on the ligaments of the neck. We are subjecting this masterpiece of engineering to static loads it was never designed to bear. The chronic back pain that plagues modern humanity is not a sign of broken bodies, but of a broken environment. It is the cry of a hunter-gatherer spine trapped in a sedentary cage. The text neck, the sciatica, the stiff lower back, these are the whispers of the ancestor, begging us to stand up, to walk, to engage the spring. There is a profound beauty in this vulnerability. The spine is a testament to the risks life is willing to take for a better vantage point. Nature saw the advantage of the high head, the free hands, and the long view, and it decided the risk of a broken back was worth it. It compromised. It cobbled together a solution using the materials at hand, the spool-shaped vertebrae of a fish, the rib cage of a mammal, the muscle fibers of a climber, and twisted them into a new shape. Imagine the spine as a timeline. The coccyx, the tailbone, is the vestige of the tail we lost when we left the canopy, a fused memory of the branch-gripping days. The sacrum is the welded plate that joins us to the hips, the anchor of the walking machine. The lumbar is the daring curve of the savanna, the weight-bearer. The thoracic is the ancient cage of the sea-dwelling ancestors, protecting the vital organs. The cervical is the lookout tower, and atop it all sits the skull, the house of the mind that can comprehend its own anatomy. In the marrow of these bones, the blood cells are born. Deep inside the vertebrae, in the red darkness, the body manufactures the oxygen-carrying cells that fuel our thoughts and our steps. The spine is not just a structural column, it is a factory of life. It is a vibrating, fluid, dynamic system that hums with the resonance of our footsteps. Go out to a place where the ground is uneven, a forest trail, a sandy beach. Walk, feel the adjustments, feel the way your spine moves. It does not stay rigid, it rotates. As your right leg swings forward, your pelvis rotates left, and your shoulders rotate right. The spine twists gently, wringing out tension, storing energy in the elastic tissues. This counter-rotation is the engine of our efficiency. We are not stiff soldiers. We are fluid dancers. We walk with a spiral motion, a waltz of bone and muscle that allows us to glide over the earth. This is the miracle of the bent pillar. It is a structure that lives on the edge of failure, constantly fighting the downdrag of the planet, constantly renewing itself. It is a bridge turned to the sky. It is the mast of the human ship, sailing through time. And as the sun sets on the Pleistocene savanna, casting long shadows across the grass, picture the silhouette of that lone ancestor. He stands tall. His back is arched, his head high. He is tired. His lower back throbs with a dull ache, the price of his day's labor. But he does not go back to all fours. He bears the pain. He bears the weight of the sky. Because in standing up, in bending the pillar, he has seen something that no other creature has seen. He has seen the future, and he walks toward it, one compressive, precarious, magnificent step at a time. Let the mind drift south now, following the spine of the continent, down through the great Rift Valley to the high plains of what we now call Tanzania. The year is not a number, but a sensation. It is 3,660,000 years ago. The world here is vast, open, and trembling with the geological violence of creation. To the east, the giant Sadaman volcano is waking from its slumber. It does not explode with the catastrophic fury that destroys worlds, but rather with a deep, guttural cough, a rhythmic ejection that darkens the sky for days. The sun is blotted out, replaced by a swirling gray twilight. A fine powdery snow begins to fall, but it is not the cold, wet snow of the north. It is carbonatite ash, gray and distinct, settling softly over the golden savanna, coating the acacia thorns, silencing the buzz of the cicadas, and draping the landscape in a ghostly, monochromatic shroud. The world holds its breath. The usual vibrant greens and ochres of the African plains are muted into a landscape of charcoal and slate. Then, the rain comes. It is a light rain, just enough to mix with the fallen ash, turning the ground into a vast sheet of wet, pliable cement. It is a unique chemical slurry, a rare geological accident waiting to capture a ghost. The air smells of wet stone, sulfur, and the metallic tang of ozone. The silence is profound, heavy with the dampness of the storm and the fear that follows the mountain's anger. Into this gray, silent theater, life tentatively returns. A hare hops across the wet mud, leaving tiny, frantic indentations. A prehistoric guinea fowl pecks at the ground, its three-toed tracks creating a delicate arrow pattern in the sludge. A hipparion, the three-toed ancestor of the horse, trots nervously by, its hoofprints deep and sharp. And then, emerging from the mist, come the walkers. There are perhaps 3 of them. They are Australopithecus afarensis, the southern apes of the Afar Depression. They are small, the tallest standing barely 4 or 5 feet, their bodies covered in dark hair that is matted now with the damp ash. They are quiet, likely unnerved by the darkened sky and the strange texture of the ground beneath them. But they do not run on all fours. They do not knuckle walk like the chimpanzees hiding in the distant forest patches. They walk. They step onto the wet canvas of time. The lead figure, likely a male, steps firmly. His heel strikes the mud first, making a deep impression. He rolls his weight forward along the outside of his foot and then pushes off with his big toe. Behind him, a smaller figure follows. A female, perhaps, or a juvenile. There is a pause in the rhythm of the tracks, a moment where the smaller individual seems to hesitate, perhaps turning to look back at the smoking mountain, or to check on a third, even smaller figure trailing behind. These footprints, which will harden into rock and lie buried beneath the earth for eons until a day in 1978, when they will be brushed clean by the hands of curious descendants, are the most poignant signature of our history. They are the Laetoli footprints. They are not merely marks in the dirt. They are the architectural blueprints of a new kind of animal. To understand the magnitude of what is happening in this scene, we must look down, past the skin and the mud and into the biography of the foot itself. The human foot is a masterpiece of evolution, a structure of 26 bones, 33 joints, and more than 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. But to create this masterpiece, nature had to destroy an older design. It had to erase the hand that lived at the end of our legs. For millions of years, the primate foot was a gripping tool. The big toe, the hallux, was like a thumb. It jutted out to the side, distinct and separate from the other toes. It was fully opposable, capable of locking around a thick branch or pinching a piece of fruit. The foot of our ancestors was a mechanism of abduction. It was designed to reach out, to grab, to climb. It was a chaotic, flexible instrument that allowed the ape to treat the forest canopy as a 3-dimensional ladder. But on the flat, 2-dimensional savanna, a gripping foot is a liability. Try to walk on the ground with a hand, the thumb gets in the way. It twists, it bends, it offers no leverage. To walk effectively, to travel the distances required by the drying world, the foot had to become rigid. It had to become a lever. And so, in the silent genetics of the walkers at Laetoli, the great realignment has already occurred. The big toe has been brought in line. It has been pulled from the side of the foot and pressed tight against its neighbors, adducted into a parallel position. It has lost its ability to grasp. It can no longer wrap around a tree trunk. It has surrendered its dexterity for stability. This was a profound sacrifice. In the logic of evolution, to lose a thumb is to lose a superpower. It meant that if a predator chased these ancestors, they could no longer scramble up a smooth trunk with the ease of their cousins. They were tethered to the earth. But in exchange for the grip, the big toe became the engine of propulsion. Look at the Laetoli prints again. The deepest part of the impression, aside from the heel, is the toe-off. This is the moment where the entire weight of the body is leveraged against the ground to push forward. The big toe became a stiff, unyielding strut, the final point of contact that propels the stride. It is the launch pad for every step you have ever taken. Yet, the realignment of the toe is only half the story. The true genius of the human foot, the adaptation that separates us from every other creature that has ever walked, lies in the empty space between the heel and the ball of the foot, the arch. In the footprint of the ape, the foot is flat. The sole makes full contact with the ground. It is a floppy, flexible paddle. But the Laetoli footprints show something new, a curve of darkness where the mud was not touched. The foot has arched. The longitudinal arch is not a bone. It is a tension structure. It is created by the shape of the bones, but held together by the plantar fascia, a thick, fibrous band of connective tissue that runs from the heel to the toes. Think of the foot as a bow, and the plantar fascia as the bowstring. When you step down, the weight of your body flattens the arch slightly, stretching the bowstring. This stores elastic energy. As you lift your heel to push off, the tension is released. The arch snaps back, returning the energy to your leg, flinging you forward. This is the secret of human endurance. We are the only mammals with a built-in spring in our feet. A wolf runs with muscles, a human walks with springs. This mechanism reduces the metabolic cost of walking by nearly half. It turned the human body into the most efficient traveling machine on the planet. While the chimp exhausts itself after a mile of bipedal walking, the owners of these arched feet could walk for 10, 20, 30 miles without tiring. The arch transformed the foot from a passive platform into a dynamic shock absorber. Consider the violence of the heel strike. When the Laetoli walkers stepped onto the ash, their heels hit the ground with a force equal to 1.5 times their body weight. Without the arch to dampen this blow, the shock would shudder up the shin, shattering the knees and grinding the hips. The arch receives the weight, deforms to accept it, and then stiffens to push off. It is a living suspension system, a bridge of bone and gristle that mediates the conflict between the heavy body and the hard earth. But let us return to the ash, to the sensation of that walk. The atmosphere is cooling as evening approaches. The ash is beginning to harden. The walkers are moving slowly. Why? Perhaps because the footing is slippery, or perhaps because they are not merely traveling. They are living. There is a detail in the Laetoli tracks that speaks across the eons with a voice louder than any scientific paper. The trail of the larger individual, let's assume the male, is overlaid by the trail of the smaller one. The smaller individual did not just walk alongside. They walked in the footprints of the leader. They adjusted their stride, stepping exactly where the other had stepped. Why? Was it a game? A child mimicking a parent, as children have done for 1,000,000 years? Was it safety? Trusting that if the ground held for the large one, it would hold for the small one? Or was it an act of profound intimacy, a desire to touch the earth only where it had already been warmed by the kin? This behavior, this following in the footsteps, suggests a mind that is aware of the other. It implies a social bond that goes beyond the mere herd instinct. It speaks of a connection, a tether of empathy and trust. In the vast gray loneliness of the volcanic plain, they were not alone. They had each other. The footprint becomes a symbol of this shared journey. We were no longer solitary climbers in the canopy, fighting for our own patch of fruit. We were a band, a line of walkers, threading our way through a dangerous world, step by synchronized step. The texture of the ash against their skin would have been gritty, cold, and wet. They did not have shoes to protect them. The soles of their feet were their only contact with the reality of the planet. Over generations, the skin of the sole had thickened, becoming a tough, leathery pad capable of withstanding thorns, hot sand, and sharp rocks. The foot became a sensory organ of its own. It learned to read the ground. It could detect the vibration of a herd of wildebeest miles away. It could feel the temperature shift in the soil that signaled a source of water. However, this specialization came with a heavy cost, a vulnerability that we still carry. By tightening the ligaments to create the arch and the rigid lever, we lost the ability to rotate the foot freely. If you twist your ankle on uneven ground, the ligaments tear. The sprained ankle is a uniquely human injury, a failure of our specialized engineering. A chimp's foot is loose and floppy. It rarely sprains. Our foot is a tightly wound spring. When it is forced beyond its limits, it snaps. Furthermore, the plantar fascia, that heroic bowstring, is under constant, relentless tension. If it is overworked, if the arch collapses or is stressed too much, it becomes inflamed. The burning pain of plantar fasciitis, which plagues so many modern humans, is the complaint of a structure that has been asked to bear the weight of the world for too long. It is the cry of the bowstring that has been drawn too tight. But on that day in Laetoli, there was no pain, only the rhythm of the walk. Squish, step, push, squish, step, push. The ash hardened. The rain stopped. The sun likely set, casting the volcano in a silhouette of fire and smoke. The walkers moved on, leaving the stage, disappearing into the vastness of the Pliocene night. They walked toward a future they could not imagine, a future where their descendants would walk out of Africa, across the frozen land bridges of the Ice Age, to the moon, and eventually to the very spot where they stood, to brush away the dust and wonder at the parents of humanity. The ash hardened into tuff, a rock as durable as concrete. Layers of sediment buried the prints. Grass grew over them. Trees took root. Empires of animals rose and fell above them. The seasons cycled 3 million times. The footprints lay there, a silent recording of a few seconds in time, a lithified memory. They waited. They waited for the mind that would understand them to arrive. When we look at the Laetoli prints today, we do not just see anatomy, we see a narrative. We see the moment when we committed to the earth. The foot is often overlooked in the story of human evolution, overshadowed by the glamour of the growing brain or the dexterity of the tool-making hand. But it was the foot that led the way. The brain did not expand until long after we stood up. The hand did not craft the first stone tool until millions of years after the big toe came in line. We walked first. We became travelers first. The foot is the silent witness to our nomadic soul. It is the body part that touches the world. It is the root system of the human animal. Every migration, every exploration, every escape from danger began with the mechanism of the arch and the lever. We are the species that walks. We walked out of the food chain and into the history books. Think of the cost again. The loss of the trees meant we slept on the ground. We became vulnerable to the leopard in the night. We could not escape up. We had to stand and fight, or walk and endure. This vulnerability forced us to develop weapons, fire, and language. The shape of the foot necessitated the invention of culture. Because we could not climb away from our problems, we had to solve them. And what of the smaller one in the tracks? That image haunts the paleoanthropologist. It is the first physical evidence of the burden of childhood. The young of our species are slow. They cannot keep up. They must be guided. They must be protected. The tracks show that the group moved at the speed of its slowest member. This is the birth of compassion. In the brutal logic of the wild, the slow are left behind. But in the lineage of the human, the slow are waited for. The small footprints inside the large ones are a testament to the patience that would become the hallmark of human society. As night falls in your world now, and you lie in the horizontal safety of your bed, picture your own feet. They are tired. They have borne your weight all day. The arches have flattened and sprung back thousands of times. The plantar fascia is tight. The big toe is resting. They are the direct legacy of that walk in the ash. Your feet are not modern inventions. They are ancient artifacts attached to your ankles. They are the same feet that crossed the volcanic plain. They are the same feet that felt the bite of the Ice Age snow and the heat of the Mesopotamian sand. Beneath the skin, the bones are arranged in the same bridge-like architecture that saved the Laetoli walkers. Feel the memory in your bones, the urge to walk, to wander, to move forward. It is written in the geometry of your heel and the span of your arch. We are not meant to be still. We are built to cover ground. But for now, the journey pauses. The gravity lifts. The arch relaxes. The ash of Laetoli is cold and hard now, preserved in a museum of the earth. But the walk continues. It continues in the rhythm of your breath, in the beat of your heart, and in the quiet knowledge that you are part of a procession that began in the gray twilight of a volcanic storm millions of years ago. A procession of brave, fragile creatures who decided, against all odds, to put one foot in front of the other and walk toward the horizon. The wind shifts over the kaleidoscope of the Pliocene landscape, carrying the scent of drying grass and the distant metallic promise of rain. In the vast open theater of East Africa, a figure stands silhouetted against the bleeding orange of the setting sun. It is a silhouette that would look strange to the creatures watching from the shadows of the acacia scrub, a silhouette that is impossibly tall, precariously balanced, and unnervingly vertical. But the most striking feature of this new animal is not its legs, nor its spine, nor even the tentative arch of its foot. It is the appendages that hang at its sides. For the first time in the 4-billion-year history of life on this planet, a mammal has divorced its forelimbs from the earth. The hands, which for millions of years served as paws, hoof substitutes, and grappling hooks, are suddenly, miraculously empty. They dangle in the air, weightless and unemployed. Gravity, which once dictated their every position, has released its claim. This moment, this quiet suspension of the arms, is the silent thunderclap of human evolution. It is the liberation that would eventually build empires, paint masterpieces, and split the atom. But here, in the tall grass, It begins simply with the strange sensation of emptiness. Imagine the sensory confusion of the ancestor who first experienced this. For eons, the feedback loop of the nervous system was tuned to the ground. The palms were calloused readers of the terrain, constantly sending signals about the slope of the hill, the sharpness of the gravel, the stability of the mud. Now, the palms are open to the air. They feel the brush of the wind. They feel the heat of the sun in a way they never could when pressed against the soil. The blood pools differently in the fingers. The muscles of the shoulders, no longer locked in the compression of the quadrupedal stance, begin to relax, allowing the arms to swing in a gentle counter-rhythm to the legs. This new freedom was a terrifying vulnerability. To lose the use of the forelimbs for running meant that the ancestor was slower. In a sprint against a leopard, we were doomed. We had sacrificed four-wheel drive for a two-legged wobble, but nature, in her ruthless calculus, traded velocity for versatility. The hand was no longer a specialized tool for locomotion, it was a generalized tool for everything else. In the quiet mornings of the savannah, these liberated hands began to explore the world with a curiosity that borders on the erotic. Without the burden of weight, the skin of the fingertips began to refine. The ridges of the fingerprints, the dermatoglyphs, became more sensitive. They became the eyes of the body. Watch an ancestor now squatting by a riverbed. She reaches out not to walk but to touch. She picks up a river stone. She does not need it. She is not going to throw it. She simply holds it. She feels the cool smoothness of the basalt, the weight of it in her palm, the way it warms against her skin. She turns it over. This simple act, manipulation without intent, is a revolution. In the brain, a sleeping giant is stirring. The area of the cortex dedicated to the hand is expanding, consuming real estate, demanding more neurons to process the flood of tactile information coming from these 10 sensitive probes. The hand is teaching the brain about the physics of the world. It is teaching the brain about texture, about density, about shape. The universe is no longer just something to move through. It is something to hold. As the epochs dissolved into one another, this exploration turned to utility. The most immediate and profound impact of the empty hand was the ability to carry. In the animal kingdom, carrying is a luxury. A lion can carry a kill, but only with its jaws, which means it cannot defend itself or call out while doing so. A chimp can carry a fruit, but it must walk on 3 legs, hobbling and vulnerable. But the upright human could carry without cost. Picture a scene in the heat of the day. A male hominid has found the carcass of an antelope, scavenged from the kill of a cheetah. It is a rich prize, a leg full of marrow and meat. In the old world, he would have to eat it there, terrified, gulping down chunks before the hyenas arrived. He would be vulnerable, head down, blind to the horizon. But now, he stands up. He lifts the prize into his arms. He cradles the bloody limb against his chest, and he walks. He walks miles, back to a grove of trees, back to a safe harbor where the rest of his group waits. This act, transporting resources from a place of danger to a place of safety, rewrote the social contract of our species. It created the concept of a home base. It allowed for the sharing of food, the very foundation of human altruism. Because we could carry, we could give. The hand that held the meat became the hand that fed the tribe. The solitary struggle for calories began to shift into a communal effort, all because the forelimbs were free to act as a shopping cart. But the hands carried something far more precious than meat. They carried the future. As the pelvis narrowed and the brain expanded, our infants were born earlier and earlier, helpless and soft. They could not cling to the fur of a mother running on all fours. They were too heavy, and the mother had less hair. The infant had to be held. Visualize the mother in the long grass. She is tired. The sun is relentless. She must keep moving to find water. She gathers her infant into her arms. The left arm, usually, cradling the child's head near the rhythmic comfort of her heart. Her right hand is free to forage, to push aside branches, to defend. The embrace becomes the default posture of parenthood. The energy that once went into walking now flows into holding. The arms become a mobile cradle, a womb outside the body. This necessity of carrying shaped the emotional landscape of humanity. To carry a child for miles requires a kind of endurance that is not just physical, but psychological. It requires a suppression of the self, a dedication to the burden. The mother-infant bond was forged in the fire of this bipedal requirement. The face of the mother, now inches from the face of the infant, engaged in a constant, silent dialogue of gaze and expression. The hands soothed, patted, and groomed, communicating safety in a world of teeth and claws. The sensation of skin on skin, the warmth of the small body against the large one, became the biological chemical definition of love. And then there was the silence. Before the throat learned to shape the complex wind of language, the hands spoke. In the dense forests, sound was the primary signal, a hoot, a scream, a drum on a tree buttress. But on the open savanna, where the wind swallows sound and predators listen for the slightest noise, silence was survival. The liberated hands became the first voice. Imagine a hunting party, or perhaps just a gathering group, moving through the tall stalks. A scout spots movement ahead, the tawny flank of a lioness sleeping in the shade. He does not shout. He freezes. He raises a hand. The others stop instantly. He points. That gesture, the extended index finger, is a cognitive leap of monumental proportions. It is an instruction to look where I am looking. It creates a shared reality, a triangle of attention between the pointer, the viewer, and the object. No other ape points like this. Dogs understand it because they have co-evolved with us, but a chimp will look at the finger, not the object. To point is to say, I see something, and I want you to see it too. It is the dawn of the theory of mind, the realization that other beings have thoughts and perspectives. The hand sketched the first sentences in the air, long before the tongue could articulate them. We waved to greet, we pushed to reject, we beckoned to summon. The grammar of the body preceded the grammar of the word. But the story of the hand reaches its crescendo with the stone. This is the moment where biology meets physics, and the world changes forever. It happens somewhere in the Great Rift Valley, perhaps in the dry bed of the Gona River, roughly 2.5 million years ago. An ancestor, perhaps Homo habilis, or a late Australopithecus, sat amidst a pile of river cobbles. These were lava rocks, hardened magma from the deep earth, rich in silica and iron. For millions of years, rocks were obstacles or missiles. You stepped over them, or you threw them. But on this day, the mind and the hand conspired to do something new. The ancestor picked up a cobble in the left hand, the anvil, or the platform. In the right hand, he held a hammer stone. He did not just bash them together in a fit of rage. He paused. He rotated the left stone, looking for a specific angle, a ridge, a flaw in the geometry. He calculated without math the physics of the strike. He brought the hammerstone down. clack. The sound was sharp, distinct, an inorganic staccato that had never been heard in nature before. It was not the sound of wind or water or animal cry. It was the sound of manufacture. A flake of stone flew off. It spiraled through the air and landed in the dust. The ancestor picked it up. It was terrifyingly sharp. The edge was thinner than a fingernail, sharper than a lion's tooth. It was a knife. Hold this moment in your mind. The creature had just created a new biological part. He had manufactured a claw. Nature had not given him sharp teeth or tearing talons. She had given him a brain and hands. And with those, he built what he lacked. He tested the flake against the tough hide of a wildebeest carcass. The skin, which would have resisted his blunt human teeth, parted like water under the stone edge. This was the Oldowan industry, the first technology. But it was more than just a tool. It was a feedback loop. To make a stone tool requires a level of dexterity and planning that taxes the brain to its limit. You must strike at exactly the right angle, with exactly the right force. If you hit too hard, the rock shatters. Too soft, and nothing happens. You must visualize the flake inside the rock before you release it, a concept called conchoidal fracture. As the hands practiced this violent art, the brain grew. The motor cortex expanded. The planning centers in the frontal lobes thickened. And as the brain grew, it directed the hands to make even better tools. The flakes became symmetrical. The hand axes became teardrops of perfection. The relationship between the hand and the brain became a spiraling ascent of complexity. We thought with our hands. We reasoned with our fingers. The tool was not separate from the body. It was an extension of the mind. Consider the thumb. To grip the hammerstone effectively, the thumb had to lock against the palm. This is the power grip. But to rotate the core and find the striking platform, the fingers had to work gently, using the precision grip. The muscles of the thenar eminence, the fleshy pad at the base of your thumb, grew thick and strong. If you look at your own hand now, that mound of muscle is a testament to millions of hours of stone napping by your ancestors. You are wearing the anatomy of the Stone Age. This liberation of the hands also brought a new kind of violence. A fist is a unique human adaptation. In other primates, the fingers are too long, the palm too short. To punch with a chimp's hand is to break one's own fingers. But the human hand, with its shorter fingers and robust thumb, can fold into a dense, solid rock of bone and flesh. We evolved to craft, but we also evolved to fight. The empty hands could be filled with a stone, a club, or simply closed into a battering ram. The same appendage that could caress a fevered brow could shatter a jaw. This duality, the healer and the killer, lives in the palms of our hands. The nights of the Paleolithic were long and dark. Imagine the ancestor sitting by the embers of a fire, another gift of the manipulative hand. The day's work is done. The hands are tired. They are covered in the dust of the savanna, perhaps stained with the juice of berries or the blood of a kill. The fingers curl naturally in repose. In the flickering orange light, the ancestor looks at his own hands. He turns them over. He sees the lines on his palms, the map of his life. He sees the scars where the stone slipped, the calluses from the digging stick. He traces the shape of his own fingers. Perhaps in a moment of abstract wonder, he presses his hand into the soft red clay of the riverbank, or places it against the wall of a cave and blows pigment over it. The negative handprint. You have seen them in the caves of France, of Indonesia, of Argentina. They are the universal signature of our species. I was here, they say. I was alive. I had a hand, and I touched the stone. This urge to leave a mark, to externalize the self, comes from the liberation of the forelimb. If we were still walking on our knuckles, we would never have painted the walls. We would never have carved the figurine. The hand became the conduit for the soul. As you lie there now, drifting towards sleep, let your awareness settle in your hands. Feel them resting at your sides or on your chest. They are heavy with history. They are the descendants of the hands that pulled the first tuber from the dry earth. They are the great-grandchildren of the hands that cupped the first spark of fire. They are the heirs to the hands that threw the spear and caught the baby. Feel the twitch of the thumb, the echo of the grip. Your hands are currently empty, relieved of their duties for the day. They are no longer typing, steering, cooking, or carrying. They have returned to the state of the first biped, hanging, waiting, sensing. In the silence of your own room, you are connected to that moment on the savannah. The liberation is still happening. Every time you pick up a pen, every time you thread a needle, every time you wave goodbye, you are celebrating the moment we stood up and let the hands go. The journey of the hand is the journey of the mind. From the branch to the stone, from the stone to the silicon chip, the hand has been the tireless servant of human curiosity. It led us out of the trees and into the world of things made, things held, and things shared. And in the quiet dark, it is the hand that pulls the blanket up, a final ancient gesture of comfort before the dreams begin. The sun in the Pleistocene epoch was not merely a celestial body, it was a deity of oppression. In the high latitudes, the sun is a welcome friend, a bringer of thaw and harvest. But here, in the cradle of the Rift Valley, on the open, shadeless expanse of the equatorial savanna, the sun is a hammer. It hangs in the zenith, a blinding white disk that dominates the sky, bleaching the color from the world and pressing down upon the earth with a physical weight. Imagine the silence of the savannah at high noon. It is not a silence of emptiness, but a silence of evasion. The roar of the lion has ceased. The chirping of the weaver bird is stilled. The great herds of wildebeest and zebra have ceased their grazing. They stand motionless in the fragmented shade of the acacia trees, heads low, tails twitching languidly. The heat rises from the baked clay in shimmering waves, distorting the horizon, turning the distant hills into liquid mirages. The ground temperature soars to a blistering 150 degrees Fahrenheit. To touch the earth is to burn. In this furnace, biology usually calls a truce. The rule of the wild is simple. When the sun is high, life stops. To move is to generate internal heat. To generate heat in this environment, where the external world is already hotter than the blood, is to court death. The brain, that delicate, temperature-sensitive engine, begins to cook. Proteins denature, neurons misfire, and so the animal kingdom sleeps, waiting for the mercy of the dusk. But in the midst of this paralyzed, shimmering landscape, a figure moves. It does not hide. It does not sleep. It walks steadily through the wall of heat, a dark vertical stroke against the pale gold of the grass. This is the anomaly. This is the cooling machine. This is the naked ape, defying the tyranny of the noon. To understand how our ancestors conquered the heat, we must look at the invisible physics of the air and the light. We must consider the geometry of survival. For millions of years, our lineage, like most mammals, lived horizontally. A quadruped, a baboon, a leopard, an early hominid on all fours, exposes the entirety of its back to the sun. The spine, the lungs, the heart, and the digestive organs are laid out like a solar panel, absorbing the maximum amount of radiation. Furthermore, the quadruped is trapped in the thermal boundary layer. This is the zone of air immediately adjacent to the ground. Because the Earth absorbs the sun's energy and radiates it back upward, the air within 18 inches of the soil is significantly hotter than the air 5 feet up. A creature walking on all fours is wading through a river of superheated air, trapped between the hammer of the sun above and the anvil of the baking earth below. There is no escape. The breeze, which flows freely a few feet above the grass, is slowed by friction at ground level, leaving the air stagnant and stifling. But when the ancestor stood up, he performed a radical thermodynamic trick. He changed his aspect ratio. By aligning his body vertically, he drastically reduced the surface area exposed to the direct, overhead rays of the midday sun. Instead of striking the vast expanse of the back, the sunlight now struck only the crown of the head and the narrow shelf of the shoulders. The rest of the body, the chest, the stomach, the long legs, remained in the noon shadow cast by the head and shoulders. Mathematical models suggest that this simple shift in posture reduced the solar radiation load on the body by as much as 60%. We became obelisks, minimizing our footprint in the light. But the advantages of the upright stance went beyond mere geometry. We grew tall. We lifted our sensitive brains and our vital organs out of the thermal boundary layer. We rose out of the stagnant, baking air near the ground and entered the microclimate of the wind. Feel the sensation of a breeze on your face on a hot day. That is the feeling of survival. At 5 feet off the ground, the air moves faster. It is cooler, cleaner, and less humid. By standing up, our ancestors effectively climbed a ladder into a different atmospheric zone. The breeze could now wrap around the torso, carrying away the metabolic heat generated by walking. We became air-cooled engines. The upright posture was not just about freeing the hands. It was about venturing into the cool stream of the upper air. However, standing up was only the first step in the great cooling. To truly master the heat, to become the persistence hunter that could run the antelope to exhaustion, we had to change our very skin. We had to undress. Picture the ancestor covered in the thick, matted fur of the ape. Fur is a magnificent insulator. It traps air, keeping the animal warm in the cold night and protecting the skin from the sun. But fur is a barrier to evaporation. If an animal sweats under a thick coat, the water merely soaks the hair, creating a hot, wet blanket that traps heat rather than releasing it. For a creature that wanted to move continuously in the heat, the fur had to go. And so, deep in the silence of the genome, a silent error occurred. A mutation in the keratin genes, or perhaps a regulatory shift in the DNA that controls hair follicle development, began to thin the coat. Over thousands of generations, the dense pelt of the forest dweller faded. The thick guard hairs disappeared. The undercoat vanished. We were left with a vellus hair, fine, almost invisible peach fuzz that covers our bodies today. We became the naked ape. This was a moment of profound vulnerability. Without fur, the skin was exposed to the biting flies, the thorns of the acacia, and the cold of the Pleistocene nights. We lost our camouflage. We lost our armor. But we gained a radiator. The loss of fur paved the way for the development of our greatest superpower, the eccrine sweat gland. Most mammals have sweat glands, but they are usually apocrine glands located near hair follicles, producing a thick, oily substance used largely for scent and signaling, the musk of the animal world. They pant to cool down, evaporating moisture from the tongue and lungs. But panting is mechanically tied to breathing. An animal cannot pant and run at full speed simultaneously. It is a limited system. Humans, however, evolved a new skin. We are covered in nearly region 2 to 4 million eccrine glands. These are water factories. They pump a fluid that is 99% water and salt directly onto the surface of the skin. When this water meets the dry, moving air of the savanna, it evaporates. Evaporation is a physical miracle. To turn water from liquid to gas requires energy, heat energy. As the sweat molecule breaks its bonds and flies off into the atmosphere, it takes a packet of heat with it, stealing it directly from the blood in the capillaries just below the skin surface. Imagine the ancestor walking at noon. The sun beats down. The internal temperature rises. Instantly, the skin glistens. A sheen of diamond beads appears on the forehead, the chest, the back. The breeze strikes this wet skin, and the cooling is immediate and profound. We became capable of dumping heat at a rate that no other mammal could match. While the cheetah must stop after a minute of sprinting or risk cooking its own brain, the human could jog for hours, wrapped in a self-generated envelope of cool, evaporative mist. But notice a curious vestige. We did not lose all our hair. On the very top of our heads, the place most exposed to the vertical sun, we kept a dense thicket of hair. The hair on the scalp is a solar helmet. It creates a barrier of dead air, preventing the sun's rays from striking the scalp directly and overheating the brain, while allowing the sweat on the neck and face to evaporate freely. It is a precise, surgical retention of insulation exactly where it was needed and nowhere else. This transformation of the skin brought with it another visible change, one written in the palette of human diversity. The naked skin, stripped of its fur, was suddenly exposed to the intense ultraviolet radiation of the equator. UV light is a double-edged sword. It is necessary for the synthesis of vitamin D, but in high doses it destroys folate, a nutrient essential for fetal development, and damages the DNA, causing cancer. To protect the blood and the code of life, the skin grew dark. The melanocytes, cells deep in the epidermis, began to pump out melanin, a pigment that acts as nature's sunscreen. It absorbed the harmful UV rays, dissipating them as harmless heat. The first humans, the ones who conquered the savanna, were not pale. They were wrapped in liquid midnight, a skin of rich, protective ebony that allowed them to walk safely under the glare of the great eye. This darkness was not a racial marker. It was a survival suit, a biological armor forged by the sun itself. Yet, for all this mastery, the cooling system came with a heavy price. This is the evolutionary duality of our cooling. By relying on sweat, we became a water-dependent species. A human walking in the heat can lose a liter of water an hour. We are leaky vessels. We cannot store heat like a camel. We must dump it. And to dump it, we must constantly replenish the tank. This thirst tethered us to the landscape in a new way. We could not roam indefinitely into the arid dunes. We had to map the land by its water holes. We had to carry water, perhaps in ostrich eggshells or sealed bladders, anticipating our thirst before it arrived. The need to drink shaped our migration paths, our settlements, and our daily rhythms. We bought our endurance with our thirst. Let us return to the scene on the savanna. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The heat is at its peak. The heat haze makes the air look like it is boiling. Under the shade of a baobab tree, a leopard lies panting, its ribs heaving, its tongue lolling, trapped by its own fur and its inability to sweat. It watches with golden, heavy eyes as a group of humans walks past. They are walking at a steady, rhythmic pace. They are glistening with sweat. Their dark skin absorbs the light, but the wind cools them. They are talking quietly, their voices carrying in the dry air. They do not stop. They are the masters of the empty hours. They have found a niche in time where they have no competitors. Because they can walk when others must sleep, they can reach the carcass first. They can patrol the boundaries of their territory while the enemy is comatose. They can travel to the next valley to find new resources. The cooling breeze was not just a comfort. It was a weapon. It allowed us to outlast the world. This system, this intricate dance of posture, skin, and water, is still with you. Think of a fever. When you are sick and your body fights an infection, the fever breaks. You sweat. You throw off the blankets. You feel the cool air on your skin and the immense relief of the temperature dropping. That relief is the echo of the savannah. Think of the runner's high, the feeling of moving your body until it glistens, the wind rushing past your ears, the clarity of mind that comes after a long jog. That is the biological memory of the ancestor who realized that while the rest of the world was paralyzed by the sun, he could run. He could run into the heat, protected by his nakedness and his sweat, chasing the horizon that no other creature dared to seek. The breeze that cools you today is the same breeze that saved us then. It is the invisible river that flows over the land, and by standing up, we waded into it. We let it wash over our new, sensitive skin, and in doing so, we cooled the burning engine of the growing brain, allowing us to think, to plan, and to dream, even while the world burned around us. The sun hangs at the zenith of the Pleistocene sky, a disk of white fire that has banished all shadows to the trembling earth. It is the hour of the great stillness, a time when the pulse of the African savanna slows to a lethargic crawl. The lions have retreated into the deep gloom of the thickets, their golden flanks rising and falling in heavy, panting sleep. The hyenas have sought the cool dampness of their dens. Even the insects seem to hold their breath, silenced by the oppressive weight of the heat. The temperature climbs past 100 degrees, turning the air into a shimmering liquid curtain that distorts the horizon, making the distant acacia trees dance like ghosts. In this furnace, where biology dictates that life should rest, a rhythm breaks the silence. It is not the thunderous gallop of the herd, nor the explosive sprint of the cheetah. It is a softer sound, repetitive and relentless. Thud, hiss, thud, hiss. It is the sound of a bare foot striking the hard-packed red clay, rolling through the arch and pushing off into the dust. A figure emerges from the heat haze. It is a human, a Homo erectus male, stripped of fur, his dark skin glistening like polished obsidian in the punishing light. He is not running fast. A gazelle would mock his pace. He is moving at a trot, a steady, hypnotic jog that hovers somewhere between a walk and a run. He is alone, or perhaps accompanied by a single hunting partner, a shadow mirroring his stride. They are the only things moving in a world paralyzed by the sun. They are the anomalies. They are the persistence hunters. To understand the terror and the majesty of this moment, one must first understand the biological paradox of the human form. By the standards of the animal kingdom, we are, on paper, a failure of design. We are painfully slow. A house cat can accelerate faster than an Olympic sprinter. We are remarkably weak. A chimpanzee, our forest cousin, possesses muscle fibers that are 4 times as dense and powerful as ours, capable of ripping a car door off its hinges. We have no claws to tear flesh, no fangs to puncture jugulars, no armor to deflect a blow. In a wrestling match with nature, we should lose every time. But we possess a secret weapon, hidden deep within the fibers of our muscles and the architecture of our bones. We traded explosive power for something far more insidious: endurance. We became the masters of the long game. While the feline and the antelope are built of fast twitch muscle fibers, biological rocket fuel that burns hot and fast, allowing for incredible bursts of speed that are exhausted in seconds, the human engine is built of slow twitch fibers. These are the fibers of patience. They burn slowly, efficiently, sipping oxygen and glucose, refusing to fatigue. They allow the legs to move, piston-like, for hours, for miles, for days, without failure. Watch the runner now. Watch the mechanics of his stride. It is a symphony of conservation. As his foot strikes the ground, the impact is not absorbed by muscle alone, but by the great tendon of the heel, the Achilles. In our primate cousins, this tendon is short, almost non-existent. In us, it is a thick, ropey cable, the longest and strongest tendon in the body. It acts as a biological spring. Upon impact, it stretches, storing the kinetic energy of the collision. As the foot rolls forward, the tendon snaps back, flinging the body into the next step. We are not powering ourselves with muscle alone. We are riding the elastic recoil of our own anatomy. We are bouncing across the landscape. Look higher, to the neck. There is a ligament there, buried deep beneath the skin, called the nuchal ligament. It connects the base of the skull to the spine. Dogs have it. Horses have it. Chimpanzees do not. It is a feature found only in runners. Its job is to keep the head steady when the body is jostling. Without it, the human head, heavy and balanced on a vertical spine, would bob violently with every running step, making it impossible to focus the eyes. This ligament is a silent tether, a shock absorber that keeps the gaze fixed on the horizon, locked on the target. It is a piece of anatomy that proves we were born to run. The target today is a kudu, a magnificent spiral-horned bull, standing over 5 feet at the shoulder, draped in a coat of gray-brown fur with white stripes. He is a creature of speed and nervous energy, designed by millions of years of predation to detect the leopard in the grass and explode into a sprint that hits 40 miles per hour. He is a masterpiece of evasion. The hunt began hours ago, in the cool gray light of dawn. The hunters found the fresh spoor, the heart-shaped indentations of hooves in the sand, the still warm droppings. They did not rush. They read the earth. This is the cerebral part of the hunt, the part where the liberated hands and the big brain play their role. They analyze the gait of the animal from its tracks. Was it limping? Was it heavy with calf? Was it a solitary male? They projected their minds into the mind of the beast, predicting its path to the waterhole, its desire for shade. Now, at noon, the visual contact is made. The kudu lifts its heavy head. Its large radar dish ears swivel. It sees the upright figures approaching. It does not panic, for they are far away, and they are slow. The kudu snorts, a puff of dust rising from its nostrils. It turns and sprints. The acceleration is breathtaking. In seconds, the antelope is a blur, putting half a mile between itself and the plodding bipeds. It vanishes into the scrub. By all conventional logic, the hunt is over. The prey has won. The predators are left in the dust. But the humans do not stop. They do not sprint. They do not change their rhythm. They simply keep jogging. Thud, hiss, thud, hiss. The cadence is a metronome, counting down the seconds of the prey's life. They track the animal through the brush. They see the broken twig where it crashed through a thicket. They see the disturbed gravel where it turned. They run the path the animal ran. A mile ahead, the kudu stops. It is safe. The threat is gone. It stands in the shade of a thorn tree, its sides heaving. It needs to cool down. Its physiology is trapped in a thermal cage. Like most mammals, it cools by panting, rapid, shallow breaths that evaporate moisture from the nasal passages and lungs. But panting has a fatal flaw. It is mechanically coupled to respiration. To pant effectively, the animal must be stationary or moving slowly. It cannot pant and sprint at the same time. Its body temperature has spiked from the run. It needs 20 minutes of rest to offload that heat, to bring its blood back to a safe temperature. It settles into the shade, the adrenaline fading. The silence returns. And then, 10 minutes later, the kudu sees it. A dark shape on the horizon. The same shape. The upright figure. It is jogging. It has not sprinted. It has not rested. It has simply arrived. The fear that grips the animal is not the sharp, sudden terror of the ambush, but a creeping, existential dread. The predator is slow, but it is inevitable. The kudu is forced to abandon the shade. It sprints again, another explosive burst of speed, another mile of distance. Again, it leaves the humans far behind. Again, its body temperature spikes. It finds another tree. It tries to pant. It tries to dump the heat. But this time, the humans appear in 8 minutes. The cycle repeats. Run, hide, overheat. See the hunter, run again. This is the strategy of the heat trap. The humans are not hunting the animal's muscles. They are hunting its thermostat. With their hairless skins and millions of sweat glands, the humans are wet with cooling fluid. The wind generated by their own running evaporates the sweat, keeping their core temperature steady. They are water-cooled engines chasing an air-cooled engine in a desert. They are rewriting the laws of thermodynamics in their favor. As the afternoon wears on, the sun begins its slow descent, but the heat remains relentless. The day in the life of the hunter is a trance of agony and focus. The mouth is dry, coated in the dust of the trail. The legs burn with the accumulation of lactic acid. But the pain is familiar, a dull background noise that the mind pushes aside. The eyes are locked on the tracks. The mind is locked on the prey. There is a profound psychological connection that forms during a persistence hunt. The hunter enters the mind of the animal. He feels its fatigue. He sees the change in the tracks, the hoof prints splaying wider as the animal's ankles tire, the drag marks of the toes as it stumbles. The hunter knows the animal is suffering. He pushes his own body to match that suffering, a ritualistic mirroring of pain. "I will endure more than you," the hunter breathes into the hot wind. "I am the shadow that does not fade." The kudu is now running with its mouth open, tongue lolling. It can no longer sweat effectively. Its fur is a suffocating blanket. Its blood is heating up, approaching the critical threshold of 42 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the brain begins to fail. Coordination is lost. The horizon starts to spin. The animal runs to a patch of shade, but it does not stop this time. It cannot. The fear urges it on. But the legs refuse. The great muscles of the hindquarters, once capable of launching the beast over 6-foot fences, are trembling jelly. The glycogen reserves, the sugar fuel of the muscles, are depleted. The animal has hit the wall. The hunters close the distance. They are no longer jogging. They are walking now, but walking with a predatory purpose. They can smell the animal. They can smell the sour scent of stress hormones and overheated musk. The end of the hunt is rarely a violent struggle. It is a moment of shared exhaustion. The kudu stands, legs splayed, head low, drooling foam. It looks at the approaching figure. It is too hot to fight. It is in a state of hypoglycemic shock and hyperthermia. It has been walked to death. The hunter approaches. He is exhausted too. His chest heaves. His skin is streaked with salt. He does not rush in with a roar. He approaches with a quiet reverence. He places a hand on the animal's flank. He feels the chaotic, fluttering heartbeat of the dying creature. In many indigenous hunter-gatherer cultures that practiced this method until recently, this moment is spiritual. The hunter thanks the animal. He acknowledges the dance they have shared across the miles. He speaks to it softly. Then, with a heavy stone or a spear, the final blow is delivered. It is quick. The suffering ends. The silence of the savanna returns. But it is different now. It is the silence of completion. The sun touches the western hills, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. But the work is not done. The hunters must now become carriers. This is where the architecture of the basin, the pelvis, and the bending of the pillar, the spine, face their second test. They butcher the animal, carving off the prime cuts, the haunches, the liver. They load the meat onto their shoulders. If the run was a testament to the legs, the return journey is a testament to the back. They must carry 50, 60, 80 pounds of meat back to the tribe. They may be 10 miles from home. They walk into the gathering dusk, their spines compressed, their glutes firing to stabilize the load. They are bringing back the most energy-dense substance on the savanna, animal protein and fat. This meat is not just food. It is fuel for the fire of intelligence. The human brain is an expensive tissue. It consumes 20% of the body's energy while resting. To grow such a brain, to maintain it, requires high-quality calories that leaves and roots cannot easily provide. The persistence hunt was the mechanism that fed the brain. We ran so that we could think. We endured so that we could imagine. As they approach the camp, the smell of wood smoke greets them. The fire is a beacon in the twilight. The tribe is waiting. The successful return triggers a celebration. The meat is shared. This is the origin of the feast, the communal meal that binds the group together. The story of the hunt is told, not in writing, but in pantomime and gesture, and eventually in language. The hunter reenacts the tracking, the kudu's sprint, the heat, the kill. The young watch, wide-eyed, learning the script of survival. This evolutionary narrative is still written in your body today. Think of the runner's high. When you push your body through a long run, when you exhaust your muscles and heat your blood, your brain releases a cocktail of endocannabinoids and dopamine. Pain vanishes. A feeling of euphoria, of connection to the world washes over you. Why? Why would nature reward us for exhausting ourselves? Because for millions of years, that feeling of exhaustion meant we were about to eat. It meant we had survived. The runner's high is a biological bribe, a chemical carrot that evolution dangled in front of us to keep us moving when every fiber of our being wanted to stop. It is the ghost of the hunt, whispering in your neurotransmitters. We are the only mammal that runs for fun. We organize marathons where thousands of people run 26 miles for a plastic medal. We jog on treadmills in air-conditioned boxes. We feel restless if we are sedentary for too long. This restlessness is the persistent hunter trapped in a cubicle. It is the ancient itch of the legs that want to measure the earth. The physiology of the persistence hunt also explains our vulnerability. We have no fur, so we freeze easily. We rely on sweating, so we die quickly without water. We have slow twitch muscles, so we are terrible at fighting off a sudden attack by a lion. We are specialized for a very specific niche, the midday marathon in the heat. When we are taken out of that niche, we struggle. But in that niche, we were kings. We did not conquer the world with fangs. We conquered it with feet. We walked out of Africa, following the herds. We walked into Europe, into Asia, across the Bering Strait. We walked until there was nowhere left to walk. As you drift to sleep, feel the twitch in your legs. It is the memory of the chase. Feel the slow, steady rhythm of your breath. It is the breath of the runner. In the deep history of your blood, you are not the prey that hides in the bush. You are the shadow on the horizon. You are the thing that keeps coming. You are the persistent hunter, resting now, gathering strength for the long run that awaits with the rising sun. The night is a heavy velvet cloak draped over the shoulders of the great Rift Valley. It is a darkness so profound that the stars do not merely twinkle. They burn with a cold, unblinking intensity, piercing the obsidian sky like millions of silent eyes watching the drama of the earth below. The year is unwritten, buried deep in the Pleistocene, perhaps 1.5 million years ago. The air is cool, carrying the scent of dry sage, cooling lava, and the distant dusty musk of a resting elephant herd. In the vast silence of this prehistoric cathedral, the sounds of the night are rhythmic and predatory. The laughing whoop of a hyena, the saw-like rasp of a leopard, the chirping of crickets counting out the seconds of survival. But in a small, sheltered alcove, perhaps a depression in the rock face, or a rough circle of piled thorn bushes, there is a sound that breaks the rhythm of the wild. It is a sound of struggle. It is the sharp intake of breath, the low guttural moan of effort, the timeless vocalization of life fighting to separate itself from life. A woman is in labor. She is a Homo erectus, strong, dark-skinned, her body shaped by the rigors of the persistence hunt and the long migrations. But now, she is immobile. She is caught in the grip of a biological paradox that threatens to tear her apart. She is facing the narrow gate. This moment, played out in the flickering light of a dying fire, is the crucible of our species. To understand the gravity of this scene, we must look beyond the pain and the blood, deep into the white, silent architecture of the bone. We must revisit the pelvis, that bowl-shaped guardian we spoke of in the dawn of our walking. When nature reshaped the pelvis to allow us to stand tall, it performed a miracle of engineering. It shortened the iliac blades, twisted the ischium, and flared the hips to create a stable platform for the gluteal muscles. It built a walking machine of unparalleled efficiency. But in doing so, it created a geometric conflict of terrifying proportions. By compressing the pelvis to support the upright torso, evolution inadvertently narrowed the bony ring in the center, the birth canal. In our primate cousins, the chimpanzees and gorillas, the birth canal is a wide, spacious passage. It is a simple, oval tunnel. The head of a chimpanzee fetus is significantly smaller than the opening it must pass through. Birth for a chimp is a rapid, solitary affair. The mother crouches, the infant slides out, often in minutes, facing forward. She reaches down, pulls her baby to her chest, cleans it, and moves on. It is a biological function, not a medical crisis. But for the human ancestor, the story was different. While the pelvis was shrinking to perfect the stride, another force was at work, pushing in the opposite direction. The brain was growing, fueled by the nutrient-dense meat of the savanna, by the complexities of social maneuvering, and by the dexterity of the tool-making hands. The cranial capacity of our lineage was exploding. We were becoming the creatures of the big head. Nature found itself in a deadlock. It needed a wide pelvis to pass the big brain, but it needed a narrow pelvis to walk efficiently on two legs. If the hips became too wide, the mechanics of the stride would fail. The femur would angle too sharply, the knees would buckle, and the energy efficiency that made us persistence hunters would vanish. We would be smart, but we would be slow, waddling snacks for the lions. So, evolution struck a compromise. It kept the hips just narrow enough to run and the head just small enough to pass, but only barely. The fit became exact. The margin for error vanished. The birth canal transformed from a simple chute into a twisting, turning labyrinth. Visualize the geometry of this passage. The entrance to the human pelvis, the inlet, is widest from side to side, but the exit, the outlet, is widest from front to back. Between these 2 points lies a curved, bony tunnel. To navigate this narrow gate, the human fetus must perform a complex corkscrew gymnastics routine. It must enter the pelvis facing sideways, then halfway down, it must tuck its chin and rotate 90 degrees to face the mother's spine, before finally extending its neck to emerge into the world. This rotation is the defining struggle of human birth. It is a journey of mere inches, but it is the most dangerous journey a human being will ever take. On this night in the Pleistocene, the mother feels this geometry as an agony that eclipses all other pain. The bones of the infant's skull are pressing against the bones of her pelvis with crushing force. The fontanelles, the soft spots on the baby's head where the skull plates have not yet fused, are allowing the head to mold, to squish, to overlap, turning the round skull into a cone to wedge through the gap. This is the first adaptation to the dilemma, the collapsible skull. We are born with heads that are not yet finished, armored plates that slide over one another to survive the squeeze. But even with a molding skull, the passage is tight. The mother's heart races. Her cortisol levels spike. In the animal kingdom, pain and fear usually signal death or attack. Here, they signal life. She is exhausted. The labor has lasted for hours, perhaps a day. Her muscles are trembling. And here, in the firelight, something profound happens. Something that separates us from every other ape in the forest. In the shadows, another figure moves. It is an older female, a grandmother, a sister, an aunt. She steps into the circle of light. She does not turn away from the vulnerable mother. She does not leave her to face the predators alone. She kneels. For a chimpanzee, birth is solitary. But because of the twisting nature of the human birth canal, the human infant usually emerges facing away from the mother. If the mother tries to reach down and pull the baby out herself, as a chimp would, she risks bending the infant's spine backward against the natural curve, causing injury. She cannot easily guide the head. She cannot unwrap the umbilical cord from the neck. She needs hands. Not her own hands, which are gripping the earth in pain, but the hands of another. The older female reaches out. She offers a soft vocalization, a hum of reassurance that vibrates in the chest. She wipes the sweat from the mother's brow. She supports the mother's weight. And as the head crowns, that dark, wet sphere pushing through the ring of bone, the midwife is there to catch it. She guides the shoulders. She clears the mucus from the mouth. She lifts the child up. This moment, the assisted birth, is the dawn of compassion. The obstetrical dilemma forced us to abandon the isolation of the primate. It made us dependent on one another in our most critical hour. The pain of the pelvis shattered the ego of the individual and forged the bond of the tribe. We survived the narrow gate only because we did not walk through it alone. But the compromise of the pelvis demanded a second price, one that would shape the entire trajectory of our social evolution. The fourth trimester. Because the pelvis could not expand any further and the brain would not stop growing, nature played its final card. It evicted the fetus early. To get a brain as large as a modern human's through the birth canal, the infant has to be born while it is effectively still a fetus. Compare a newborn horse to a newborn human. A foal, within an hour of birth, stands on wobbling legs. It shakes off the placenta, finds the teat, and can run with the herd within a day. It is born cooked, ready for the world. A newborn chimpanzee is clingy but alert. It can grip its mother's fur and support its own weight. Now look at the human infant born in the cave. It is a biological tragedy. It is helpless. Its neck muscles are too weak to hold up its heavy head. Its eyes cannot focus. Its legs are useless for transport. Its hands grasp reflexively, but it cannot hold on. It is a creature of absolute dependence. Its brain is only 25% of its adult size. If it were to be born at the same stage of development as a chimp, with a brain half the adult size, pregnancy would have to last 18 months. But the pelvis forbids it. The metabolic cost to the mother would be lethal. So, the baby is born prematurely. It enters the world before it is ready. It must complete its gestation outside the womb, in the arms of its family. This helplessness changed everything. A mother carrying a helpless infant cannot hunt effectively. She cannot scavenge with the same speed. She is burdened. In the brutal calculus of the savannah, a burdened mother is a starving mother. Unless the others help. The narrow gate forced the invention of the village. Because the baby was helpless for years, not weeks, the burden of care had to be shared. The father, the grandmother, the siblings, everyone had to contribute. The alloparents, the other parents, became essential. The grandmother hypothesis suggests that older women lived past their reproductive years specifically to provide the extra calories and care needed to keep these slow-growing, big-brained grandchildren alive. The helplessness of the infant acted as a social glue. It demanded that the male stay close, providing protection and resources, breaking the typical primate pattern of mate and leave. It demanded that the tribe share the meat from the hunt, for the nursing mother needed the energy to feed the rapidly growing brain of the child. Look at the newborn now, resting on the skin of the mother in the flickering light. It is crying, a loud, piercing sound designed to shatter the nerves of adults, to make it impossible to ignore. This cry is a survival mechanism for a creature that cannot move. It is an acoustic lifeline. The mother touches the head of the child. She feels the pulse beating beneath the soft spot, the fontanelle. That vulnerable gap in the bone is a terrifying window into the brain, but it is also a promise. It is the space left for growth. The brain will double in size in the first year, soaking up language, culture, and love like a sponge. The very helplessness that endangers the infant is what allows it to become human. Because it is born unfinished, it is not ruled entirely by instinct. It is wired by its environment. It learns to be human by watching the humans around it. The night wears on. The fire burns down to embers. The mother sleeps, exhausted, her body recovering from the trauma of the passage. The scar of the birth, the internal tearing, the bruising of the bone, will heal, but the memory remains. It is a memory written in the collective psyche of the species. In almost every culture on Earth, childbirth is surrounded by ritual, fear, and reverence. It is the battleground where death and life meet most intimately. Outside the shelter, the world is indifferent. The stars wheel overhead, the predators hunt. But inside, a victory has been won. The genetic code has successfully navigated the bottleneck. The narrow gate has opened and closed, and a new consciousness has slipped through. We carry the legacy of this dilemma in our bodies today. The wider hips of women, the distinct Q angle of the femur, the monthly cycle of preparation, these are the echoes of the compromise. And we carry it in our behavior. The urge to hold a baby's head, the instinct to rush to a crying infant, the deep, inexplicable need to gather together when a new life arrives, these are not cultural affectations. They are survival strategies born in the Pliocene. We are the children of the squeeze. We are the species that was born too soon. We are the animals that learned to love because we had no other choice. If our hips had been wider, perhaps we would not need each other so much. Perhaps we would birth alone, walk away, and live solitary lives. But the bone twisted, the gate narrowed, and we were forced into each other's arms. The dawn begins to bleed into the eastern sky, painting the clouds in shades of bruised purple and gold. The hyenas fall silent, retreating to their dens. The first bird sings. In the shelter, the baby stirs. The mother wakes. She lifts the child. She stands up. Her back aches. Her pelvis is sore. But she stands. She walks out of the cave and into the morning light, carrying the heavy, helpless, beautiful burden of the future. The narrow gate is behind her. The open world is ahead. The wind howls across the tundra of the late Pleistocene, a biting, relentless gale that scours the ice and whistles through the crags of the limestone cliffs. It is a world of stark, monochrome beauty, where the white of the snow meets the gray of the sky in a seamless horizon of cold. Here, time moves with the slow, grinding pace of a glacier. In this frozen expanse, a figure moves. It is not the fluid, effortless motion of a wolf, nor the hulking, stable plod of a mammoth. It is a motion of struggle. The figure is a man, a Neanderthal, perhaps, or an early modern human, wrapped in heavy furs that smell of smoke and animal fat. He is bent forward against the wind, clutching a bundle of firewood to his chest. Every step he takes is a negotiation. Every time his heel strikes the frozen earth, a shock wave travels up the length of his legs, through the basin of his pelvis, and slams into the base of his spine. He grimaces, shifting the load. He is not injured by a predator's claw or a rival's spear. He is being attacked by the planet itself. He is fighting the silent, invisible antagonist that has haunted our lineage since the moment we stood up. Gravity. To understand the tragedy and the triumph of the human back, we must look at gravity not merely as a force of physics, but as a biological sculptor. For billions of years, life on Earth evolved to combat this downward pull. In the ocean, water provided buoyancy. The whale and the shark float in a medium that supports their mass. On land, the quadruped evolved a brilliant solution, the suspension bridge. Picture the spine of a tiger or a wolf. It is horizontal. The vertebrae are strung like pearls on a string, supported at the front by the pillars of the shoulders and at the back by the pillars of the hips. The weight of the animal's organs hangs down from this bridge, placing the spine under tension. Tension is a force that bone handles reasonably well, and ligaments handle perfectly. A bridge that is pulled tight does not collapse, it stabilizes. In this horizontal world, the lower back is not a point of failure, it is a point of strength. But when our ancestors in the crumbling forests of the Miocene decided to rotate their world 90 degrees, they committed an act of architectural heresy. We took the suspension bridge and we stood it on its end. We turned a beam into a pillar. This singular decision, driven by the need to see over the grass and free the hands, created a structural nightmare. Suddenly, the spine was no longer under tension. It was under compression. The force of gravity, once distributed along the entire length of the back, was now concentrated vertically, bearing down with crushing intensity on the vertebrae at the bottom of the stack. We are, in the most literal sense, a biological rough draft. We are a beta version of a biped, built from the repurposed parts of a quadruped. Evolution does not have the luxury of scraping the drawing board clean and starting over. It must tinker. It must retrofit. And so, it took the simple arching spine of the ape and twisted it. The result is the S-curve, the lordosis of the lower back and the kyphosis of the upper back. This serpentine shape is a brilliant improvisation. It allows the spine to act as a spring, compressing and recoiling with each step, dampening the shock of bipedal walking. It brings the center of gravity back over the hips, allowing us to balance without exhausting our muscles. But the S-curve introduced a terrifying weak point, the lumbar region, specifically the fifth lumbar vertebra, L5, and the first sacral segment, S1. This joint, the lumbosacral junction, is the fulcrum of human agony. It is the place where the movable spine meets the immovable pelvis. It is the point where the lever arm of the torso exerts the most torque. It is the hinge upon which the history of human labor turns. Zoom in now, past the skin and the muscle, into the hidden world of the intervertebral joint. Here, sandwiched between the blocks of bone, lies the hero and the victim of our story, the disc. The intervertebral disc is a marvel of organic chemistry. It looks like a sliced onion. The outer rings, the annulus fibrosus, are made of tough, crisscrossed layers of collagen, stronger than steel wire of the same thickness. Inside this protective tire sits the nucleus pulposus, a gel-like substance that is mostly water. This gel is the shock absorber. It is the hydraulic cushion that keeps the bones from grinding together. In a quadruped, these discs are evenly loaded. But in the upright human, the load is uneven and relentless. Imagine the daily life of an ancestor in the Rift Valley. He wakes up. His discs are plump and hydrated, having soaked up fluid during the night. He stands. Instantly, gravity grabs his upper body, the weight of his head, his chest, his arms, his liver, his heart, and pulls it down. The discs are squashed. The water is slowly squeezed out of the gel, passing through pores in the bone, like water squeezed from a sponge. By the time the sun is high and he is tracking a gazelle, he is physically shorter than he was at dawn. We lose nearly half an inch of height every single day, simply by existing in an upright state. The pressure inside the L5S1 disc can rise to hundreds of pounds per square inch, even when just standing still. Now, add the burden of labor. The hands, liberated to carry, became the enemies of the back. Picture a scene from the Neolithic Revolution, perhaps 10,000 years ago. A man is building a wall of stone to pen in his goats. He spots a large, flat rock, perfect for the foundation. It weighs 80 pounds. He approaches it. His instincts, honed by millions of years of quadrupedal heritage, are to bend at the waist. He leans over. This is the moment of greatest danger. When the human spine leans forward, the S-curve straightens. The geometry shifts. The weight of the torso, plus the weight of the rock, creates a massive lever arm. The pressure on the front edge of the lumbar discs skyrockets. The gel inside the disc is pushed violently backward against the rear wall of the fibrous ring. He grips the stone. He heaves. Pop. It is not a loud sound, perhaps just a dull, wet tear in the silence of the body. But the consequences are catastrophic. The layers of the annulus have torn. The pressurized gel, seeking the path of least resistance, bursts through the wall. It bulges out into the spinal canal. This is the herniation, the slipped disc. But the pain is not in the bone. The bone has no nerves. The pain comes from what lies directly behind the disc, the spinal cord, or lower down, the cauda equina, the horse's tail of nerve roots that exit the spine to feed the legs. The bulging gel presses against the root of the sciatic nerve. This is the longest and widest nerve in the human body, a cable as thick as a thumb that runs from the lower back, through the buttocks, down the leg, all the way to the big toe. When the disc touches this wire, it is not an ache. It is lightning. The man drops the rock. He collapses to his knees. A bolt of electric white fire shoots down his leg, searing and hot. His muscles spasm, locking his back into a rigid protective splint. He cannot stand. He cannot walk. In the brutal arithmetic of the wild, he has just become a liability. This injury, the failure of the upright spine, is a uniquely human ghost. Our ape cousins do not suffer this. They do not get sciatica. They do not get herniated discs from lifting. Their spines are not loaded in this way. Back pain is the tax we pay for the privilege of our hands. It is the cost of being able to lift a child, build a pyramid, or carry a slain deer. However, the story of the back is not just a story of mechanical failure. It is a story of social survival. If this injury happened to a solitary leopard, the animal would starve. It would drag itself into the brush and die. But the archaeological record tells a different, more tender story. Travel to the site of La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France. Here, buried in the floor of a limestone cave, lies the skeleton of a Neanderthal man. He is known to science as the Old Man. He lived 50,000 years ago. When we examine his bones, we see a biography of agony. He had severe osteoarthritis. His vertebrae were fused together. He had lost most of his teeth. He likely could not hunt. He definitely could not carry heavy loads. To walk would have been a slow, shuffling torture. And yet he lived. He lived for years in this condition. How? Because someone carried the wood for him. Someone chewed his meat for him. Someone supported him when he needed to move from the fire to the sleeping skins. The fragility of the human back forced us to develop the strength of the human heart. Because our bodies were prone to these catastrophic mechanical failures, we had to build a social safety net. We had to care for the crippled. The burden of gravity became the burden of the tribe, shared among many shoulders. The spine also holds the memory of our childhood. Watch a toddler learning to walk. At first, their back is a simple C curve, like an ape's. They are quadrupedal. But as they pull themselves up on the leg of a parent, as they fight to verticalize, the lumbar muscles fire. They pull the pelvis back. They carve the lordosis into the spine. Every human being recapitulates the evolutionary struggle of the species in their first year of life. We are born with the spine of the past, and we must work to build the spine of the present. As the epochs ground on, the spine adapted, but slowly. The vertebrae grew larger at the bottom of the stack, becoming broad platforms to disperse the weight. The bony spurs, or processes, on the back of the spine grew angled and stout, creating locking mechanisms to prevent the vertebrae from sliding off one another. We developed the pars interarticularis, a small bridge of bone that acts as a check rein. But these adaptations are patches, retrofits on a system pushed to its limit. The pars is a common point of failure. In young athletes today, gymnasts, fast bowlers in cricket, linebackers, This small bone often snaps under the repetitive stress of bending backward. It is a stress fracture called spondylolysis. It is the bone crying out, "I was not designed for this." It is a reminder that even after millions of years, the retrofit is not perfect. And now, consider the modern world. We have taken this precarious gravity-fighting pillar and subjected it to a new torture: the chair. For 99% of our history, we were active. We walked, we ran, we squatted. Squatting stretches the lower back, opening the spaces between the vertebrae. Walking pumps fluid into the discs. But sitting locks the pelvis in a static position. It flattens the lumbar curve. It places a dead, static load on the discs. When you sit at a desk, slumped forward toward a glowing screen, you are reversing millions of years of engineering. You are creating a kyphosis in the lumbar region. You are pushing the gel backward, inviting the herniation. You are weakening the gluteal muscles, the guy wires that hold the tower steady. The epidemic of back pain in the modern world is not a disease, it is a mismatch. It is a Paleolithic spine trying to survive in a Victorian chair. The text neck is another chapter in this saga. The human head weighs about 10 pounds. When balanced perfectly on top of the cervical spine, the neck muscles do very little work. But for every inch you tilt your head forward to look at a phone, the effective weight of the head doubles. At a 60-degree angle, your neck is holding up 60 pounds. You are asking the delicate vertebrae of the neck to hold the weight of an 8-year-old child, hour after hour. The headaches, the neck spasms, the tingling in the fingers, these are the protests of a structure that evolved to scan the horizon, not the device in your hand. Yet, despite the pain, despite the flaws, there is a terrible beauty in the human spine. It is the mast of the ship. It is the axis of the world. Touch the center of your back. Feel the knobby ridges of the spinous processes beneath the skin. Those are the anchor points for the muscles that keep you upright. They are the rigging of the vessel. Think of the erector spinae, the massive ropey muscles that run alongside the spine. They are the unsung heroes of your daily life. They are firing right now, microscopic fibers twitching and holding, fighting the gravity that wants to pull your chest down to your knees. They never truly rest until you lie down. They are the guardians of the vertical. The burden of gravity is also the burden of consciousness. Because we stood up, we saw further. Because we freed our hands, we built tools. Because we built tools, we built civilization. The ache in the lower back is the receipt for this transaction. It is the physical sensation of the compromise. In the quiet of the night, when the day's labor is done, the body demands its return to the ancestral state. You lie down, you curl up, the fetal position. Why is it so comforting? Because it unloads the spine, it opens the facets, it relieves the compression. It is a return to the water, to the womb, to the time before we accepted the challenge of the vertical. As you drift towards sleep, visualize your discs. Visualize the water slowly seeping back into them, plumping them up, preparing them for tomorrow. The battle with gravity is paused. The war is suspended. The rough draft is resting. We are a tower of blocks balanced on a rolling ball, held together by tension and hope. It is a precarious existence, but it is our existence. We carry the weight of the sky on a column of bone, and though it creaks, though it groans, though it sometimes fails, it stands. And because it stands, we can reach the stars. The horizon is a line that asks a question. For most animals, the horizon is a limit, a boundary of territory defined by smell, by the availability of grass, or by the invisible walls of fear. A chimp knows the edges of its forest. To go beyond is to enter the void. But for the upright ape, for the creature whose eyes were lifted 5 feet above the ground to scan the distance, the horizon was not a wall. It was an invitation. It began not with a decision, but with a drift. There was no single morning where a council of elders pointed north and declared a march. There was only the slow, rhythmic expansion of a species that had solved the riddle of movement. We had perfected the legs. We had tuned the spring of the arch. We had cooled the blood with sweat. And now, the great Rift Valley, the cradle that had rocked us for millions of years, began to feel small. The pulse of the migration was beaten out by the climate. The Earth, restless in its orbit, wobbled. The rains shifted. The green Sahara bloomed and then withered. The waterholes dried up and the herds moved. And because we were the persistent walkers, the shadows that never faded, we moved with them. We followed the food, and in doing so, we accidentally discovered the world. Picture the first great exit. It is likely the gate of grief, the Bab el-Mandeb, or perhaps the land bridge of the Sinai, 100,000 years ago. The ancestors standing there are not primitive brutes. They are anatomically modern humans, or perhaps the restless Homo erectus before them. They stand on the edge of the known world. Behind them lies the heat of Africa, the familiar constellation of scents, the sage, the dust, the musk of the wildebeest. Ahead lies the unknown. To cross a desert requires more than just legs. It requires faith in the body's efficiency. The walker checks the water skin, an ostrich egg sealed with beeswax, or a bladder slung over the shoulder. This object is the key. Because our hands were free, we could carry water. Because we could carry water, we could detach ourselves from the river. We became amphibious in a metaphorical sense, carrying our own survival on our backs. The walk into the Levant was a test of the cooling system. The sun here beats down on the limestone and the sand with a ferocity that reflects upward, cooking the walker from both sides. But the vertical body offers a narrow profile. The sweat glands work furiously. The rhythmic hiss-thud of the feet on the gravel echoes in the canyons. They walk 10 miles a day, 20. A generation passes, and the tribe is 50 miles further north. Another generation, another 100 miles. It is a slow, viscous flow of humanity pouring out of the bottle of Africa. As they moved, the landscape shifted. The red dust of the savanna gave way to the scrub oaks and pines of the Mediterranean. The air grew cooler, sharper. New smells entered the collective memory, the resin of pine, the salt of a different sea. And with new lands came new challenges for the upright frame. The foot, evolved for the flat, hard-baked earth of the plains, now had to negotiate the rocky, uneven scree of the mountains. The ankle ligaments, those thick bands of white tissue, were tested as never before. Every step on loose stone was a potential disaster. A twisted ankle meant death. Yet, the proprioception, the body's ability to sense its own position, sharpened. The toes learned to grip the inside of the sandals or the bare rock. The glutes fired with precision to stabilize the swaying torso on the steep inclines. We turned right, following the coast. This was the era of the beachcombers. The path of least resistance is often the shoreline, where the flat sand offers a natural highway and the tide delivers a daily harvest of protein. We walked along the rim of the Indian Ocean, a journey of thousands of miles that spanned generations. Imagine a morning on the coast of what is now Yemen or India, 70,000 years ago. The sun rises over the water, turning the ocean into hammered bronze. The walkers are there, silhouettes against the light. They are gathering shellfish, cracking them open with the stone tools they carried from the interior. This diet, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, fed the brain, fueling the very curiosity that drove the feet. The rhythm of the walk matched the rhythm of the waves. The biological clock synchronized with the tidal clock. Here, the upright posture allowed us to wade. We could walk into the surf, holding our children and our fire-carrying baskets high above the swells. The ability to lift the arms, the liberated hands, meant we could exploit the sea without being swallowed by it. We became creatures of the edge, tracing the outline of the continent, footstep by footstep, all the way to the sun-drenched islands of Southeast Asia. But not all turned right. Some turned left. Some walked north, into the teeth of the ice. This was the ultimate test of the naked ape. We are tropical animals. Our biology is designed to shed heat, not to hoard it. We have no fur. We have long limbs that radiate warmth. To walk into the Europe of the Pleistocene was to walk into a cryo chamber. The ice sheets were descending, crushing the forests, turning the world into a gray, frozen steppe. How did the walker survive? By carrying the climate with him. The free hands, once again, were the salvation. They carried the furs of the wolf and the bear, draped over the upright shoulders. We stole the coats of the animals we ate, but more importantly, we carried the red flower. We carried fire. Visualize a clan moving through the twilight of an Ice Age winter in the Danube Valley. The snow is thigh-deep. The cold is a physical weight, pressing against the lungs. The wind bites at the exposed skin of the face. The walkers are huddled together, a procession of shivering endurance. In the center of the group, protected like a crown jewel, is the fire carrier. Perhaps it is an elder, clutching a bundle of smoldering fungi wrapped in birch bark and damp moss, keeping the ember alive. The walk here is different. It is not the bouncy, efficient jog of the savannah. It is a trudge. The hip flexors must lift the heavy, fur-clad legs high to clear the snow. The psoas muscle, deep within the core, burns with the effort. The center of gravity shifts as the feet slip on the ice. The S-curve of the spine absorbs the jarring impacts of the hidden ruts. And the cold settles into the joints. The knees, those complex hinges of cartilage and ligament, ache with a dull, throbbing misery. The synovial fluid, which lubricates the bones, thickens in the freeze. Arthritis becomes the silent companion of the migration. We see it in the skeletons they left behind, the lipping of the vertebrae, the grinding of the hip sockets. The price of walking to the ends of the earth was written in the inflammation of the bone. Yet, they did not stop. They pushed into the realm of the Neanderthals, those stocky, powerful cousins who had adapted to the cold through biology rather than technology. We met them in the mist-shrouded valleys. We likely walked alongside them, traded with them, mated with them. But we kept moving. The Neanderthal was a creature of his territory. The Homo sapiens was a creature of the horizon. Our legs were longer, our stride more efficient. We were built to wander. Generations faded into dust, yet the trait remained. The urge to see what lay beyond the next ridge became a genetic compulsion. We walked until the land ran out. Far to the north, where the sky touches the earth in a permanent twilight, we reached the edge of the world, Beringia. Today, it is a sea. But 20,000 years ago, during the last glacial maximum, the oceans were locked in the ice caps, and the sea level had fallen. A vast, grassy bridge emerged connecting Siberia to Alaska. It was not merely a bridge, it was a continent of its own, a sunken world where our ancestors paused. This was the Beringian standstill. For thousands of years, isolated by walls of ice to the east and west, a population of walkers lived in this harsh, wind-swept purgatory. They hunted the mammoth and the woolly rhino. They built shelters of bone. They huddled against the dark. Imagine the silence of Beringia. The wind never stops. It screams over the tundra, scouring the soul. The sun is a pale, weak memory for half the year. Here, the biography of the body is a story of extreme conservation. The bodies of these walkers became stockier, retaining heat. Their eyes narrowed against the glare of the snow. But the feet remained the same. The arch, the big toe, the heel, the machinery of the Rift Valley, weighted in the snow boots of skin and grass. And then, the ice began to groan. The climate shifted again. The great glaciers that blocked the way south began to retreat. A corridor opened, the ice-free corridor, or perhaps the coastal ice melted just enough to allow passage by boat and foot. The walkers moved again. They crossed into the Americas. This was the final sprint. In a geological blink of an eye, humans rushed down the spine of the new continents. They walked past the towering walls of blue ice, down into the pine forests of the northwest, through the red deserts of the southwest, into the steaming jungles of the Amazon, and up into the thin air of the Andes. Consider the day in the life of a walker in the Andes, 10,000 years ago. She is climbing a mountain path at 12,000 feet. The air is thin, oxygen is scarce. Her lungs heave, her chest expanding to its limit. Her heart hammers against her ribs, but her legs pump steadily. The gluteus maximus, the largest muscle in the body, drives her upward. The quadriceps burn. She is carrying a basket on her back, supported by a tump line, a strap across her forehead. Inside, a sleeping infant. In her hand, a digging stick. She is bringing her genetics to the clouds. The pressure on her lower back is immense, the gravity of the mountain pulling her down, but the pillar holds. The architecture of the basin supports the load. She looks down at the valley below, a world of green and mist. She is the first of her kind to see this view. She is the culmination of millions of steps. From the muddy ash of Laetoli to the granite peaks of Peru, the chain of footprints is unbroken. We are the great wanderers. No other mammal has colonized so many diverse environments, and we did it simply by putting one foot in front of the other. We did not have wings to fly over the mountains. We did not have fins to swim the oceans. We had only the stride. This bipedalism was more than just transport. It was the vehicle of our curiosity. It allowed us to carry the things that made us human. We carried the fire that cooked our food and scared back the night. We carried the water that allowed us to cross the killing sands. We carried the tools that allowed us to skin the world. And most importantly, we carried each other. The cost of this migration was high. We left our dead in the snow, in the sand, in the mud of 1,000 riverbanks. We suffered the agony of the broken bone, the infection of the blister, the weariness that settles deep into the marrow. But the adaptation was the conquest of the planet. The rhythm of the walk became the rhythm of human history. It is a slow, steady beat, roughly 1 step per second, 60 steps a minute, 3,600 steps an hour. It is the tempo of our thoughts. Philosophers have always walked to think. From Aristotle to Nietzsche, the movement of the legs seems to grease the gears of the mind. Perhaps this is because the brain evolved in motion. We are not static computers. We are mobile processors, designed to solve problems while moving through space. As the ice retreated and the waters rose, covering the land bridges, the great walk slowed. We settled. We built walls. We planted crops. We stopped moving. But the echo of the migration still lives in the quiet anxiety of the modern soul. Why do we feel restless when we stay in one place too long? Why do we stare at the horizon with a sense of longing? Why do we find peace in a long hike through the woods? It is the call of the rift. It is the memory of the feet. Deep in the code of life, there is a switch that was flipped millions of years ago, a command that says, go, see, walk. We are the species that left home. We are the animals that decided the grass might be greener on the other side of the glacier. And so, we walked. We walked until we ran out of land, and then, standing on the shores of Tierra del Fuego, looking out at the churning gray waters of the Antarctic convergence, we finally stopped, shivering in our furs, the most successful, exhausted travelers the Earth has ever known. The journey brings us, finally, to the room where you lie. The silence here is different from the silence of the savanna or the stillness of the ice. It is a manufactured quiet, insulated by walls and windows, lit by the artificial glow of the modern world. You are resting. Your body is horizontal, sinking into the softness of the mattress. But let your awareness drift inward. Listen to the story that your body is telling you, even in repose. The modern echo is a complex harmony of triumph and tragedy. We are the heirs of the walkers, but we live in a world that has engineered the walk out of existence. We have built machines to carry us. We have built chairs to hold us. We have flattened the earth with asphalt and concrete. Consider the foot, that masterpiece of the Laetoli ash. In the modern world, we encase it in shoes. We bind the arch, rendering the spring passive. We squeeze the toes into narrow boxes, forcing the big toe out of alignment, creating bunions, a deformity unknown to our barefoot ancestors. The sensory input from the soul, once a rich tapestry of texture and temperature, is muted to a dull hum. The foot has gone blind. And the spine? The bent pillar that conquered gravity? It is suffering. We spend our days hunched over glowing rectangles, reversing the cervical curve, straining the neck muscles that evolved to stabilize the head while running. We sit for hours, flattening the lumbar lordosis, compressing the discs with a static dead weight. The sciatica that shoots down the leg of the office worker is the same pain that felled the ancestor with the heavy rock. But now it comes not from exertion, but from stagnation. The great mismatch is the defining condition of our time. We are Paleolithic bodies living in a silicon age. We have the cravings of a persistence hunter, sugar, fat, salt, in a world where the hunt involves walking to the refrigerator. We have the anxiety of a prey animal in a world where the predators are emails and deadlines. But close your eyes. Feel the heaviness of your legs against the bed. That heaviness is a memory. It is the memory of the gravity you fight every day. The relief you feel when you lie down is the ancient reward for the upright struggle. It is the body saying, "The march is done for today. The burden is laid down." Trace the line of your own history. Feel the curve of your lower back, the lumbar lordosis. It is the architectural scar of the moment we stood up. Feel the width of your hips, the pelvic bowl. It is the cradle that held your ancestors' guts and allowed your own large brain to be born. Feel the palms of your hands, the liberated tools. They are soft now, perhaps, but the potential for the stone axe, the spear, and the caress is still there. In the quiet of the night, the body returns to its origins. When you sleep, your temperature drops, a mimicry of the nightly cooling on the savanna. Your breathing slows. You curl up, bringing your knees toward your chest, rounding your spine into the C shape of the fetus, the ape, the quadruped. You go back in time. You retreat from the vertical challenge and find safety in the horizontal peace. Dreams are the final frontier of this echo. In dreams, we often fall. That sudden jerk that wakes you up, the hypnic jerk, what is it? Some scientists believe it is a vestigial reflex, a ghost memory from the time we slept in trees. It is the brain thinking, I am falling from the branch, and commanding the muscles to grab on. Even in our deepest slumber, we remember the green cathedral, and in dreams, we often run. We run effortlessly. We run without pain. We run from shadows or towards light. In the theater of the mind, the persistence hunter is still alive, tracking the phantom kudu across the plains of the subconscious. We are a patchwork of eras. We are the tree climber in our shoulders, the walker in our knees, the runner in our Achilles tendon, and the thinker in our swollen craniums. We are a beautiful, aching compromise. So, as you drift into the dark, offer a silent gratitude to the bones. Thank the feet that bore the weight. Thank the spine that took the pressure. Thank the hands that carried the fire. You are the destination of the Great Migration. You are the point on the map where the line stops, for now. The long walk of the species has led to this moment of stillness, to this breath, to this rest. The horizon is still there, waiting for the morning. But tonight, the walker rests. The fire is banked. The tribe is safe. The stars wheel overhead, the same stars that watched the first ancestor stand up and tremble in the wind. Sleep now, upright citizen of the earth. Return to the ground. The journey continues tomorrow. The journey has been long. From the dappled emerald light of the Miocene Canopy to the cooling ash of the Laetoli volcano, from the heat-shimmering expanse of the savanna to the biting winds of the glacial steppe, we have followed the ancestor, step by rhythmic step, as they rose from the earth, balanced the impossible tower of the spine, and walked out to conquer the horizon. But now, the walking slows. The Great Migration, which spanned continents and epochs, comes to a pause. The landscape shifts one final time, dissolving from the wild, chaotic textures of nature into the straight lines and hard angles of the world we know today. We have arrived in the Anthropocene, the age of the human, and here, in the quiet, climate-controlled stillness of the modern room where you now rest, we face the final chapter of our biological story. It is a chapter defined not by movement, but by stasis. It is a chapter where the ancient machinery of the walker meets the strange, static environment of the sitter. This is the era of the great mismatch, where the body of a persistence hunter, sculpted by 3 million years of struggle and endurance, finds itself wandering through a world it was never designed to inhabit. Look around the world we have built. It is a marvel of comfort, yet it is a labyrinth of anatomical confusion. We have paved the earth, the uneven, treacherous, rich terrain that our feet evolved to read, the tangle of roots, the shifting sand, the yielding moss, has been replaced by concrete, asphalt, and tile. These surfaces are unforgiving. They are perfectly flat, perfectly hard, and perfectly dead. Consider the foot, that complex suspension bridge of 26 bones and 33 joints. It evolved to interact with chaos. In the wild, every step is different. The arch compresses and rebounds at different angles. The toes splay to grip. The ankle micro-adjusts to the slope. This constant variation keeps the tissues elastic and the proprioception, the body's sense of itself, sharp. But on a concrete floor, every step is identical. The foot strikes the same hardness, at the same angle, thousands of times a day. The sensory conversation between the soul and the earth is silenced. We encase these sensitive instruments in shoes, binding the arch, squeezing the toes, blinding the foot to the world it walks upon. The plantar fasciitis, the fallen arches, the aching heels, these are not failures of the body. They are the cries of a sensory organ that has been blindfolded and forced to hammer against a wall of stone. But the most profound conflict is found in the chair. The chair is, perhaps, the most subversive invention in human history. For 99% of our timeline, we did not sit in chairs. We squatted. We knelt. We sat cross-legged on the ground. In a deep squat, the lower back hangs free, tractioned by the weight of the pelvis. The spine lengthens. The hips remain open. But the chair changes the geometry of the human form. Visualize the act of sitting as you do it daily. You approach the chair. You lower your hips. The moment your thighs hit the horizontal seat, the pelvis tilts backward. The natural lordosis, that beautiful shock-absorbing curve of the lumbar spine we fought so hard to evolve, is flattened. The spine collapses into a C shape, reverting to the posture of the fetus or the ape, but without the support of the arms. The weight of the upper body, instead of flowing smoothly through the curve, lands dead on the front of the intervertebral discs. Hour after hour we sit. The psoas muscle, the deep, soulful muscle that connects the thigh to the spine, the muscle that lifts the leg for the stride, grows short and tight. It pulls on the lower vertebrae, creating a permanent tension. The gluteal muscles, the engines of our walk, the massive counterweights that keep us upright, go to sleep. They atrophy from disuse, forgetting their ancient purpose. We are the sedentary apes, trapped in a cage of comfort, asking a skeleton built for continuous motion to endure continuous stillness. And then, there is the gaze. For millions of years, the human eye scanned the horizon. We looked at the distance. We looked for the predator in the grass, the fruit in the tree, the weather in the clouds. Our neck muscles, the splenius capitis and the trapezius, evolved to hold the heavy head balanced atop the vertical column, eyes level with the world. Now, we look down. We hold devices in our hands. We stare at screens that sit below eye level. To do this, we crane the neck forward. We reverse the cervical curve. The head, which weighs 10 or 12 pounds when balanced, exerts 60 pounds of force on the neck when tilted forward at 60 degrees. We are hanging a bowling ball from the delicate ligaments of the neck, hour after hour, day after day. The headaches, the stiff shoulders, the tingling in the fingers, this is the text neck, the modern burden. It is the cost of focusing our vast predatory awareness onto a glowing rectangle of glass. The ancient adaptations struggle against this modern environment. The back aches because it is a bridge being treated like a pillar. The feet swell because the pump of the calf muscles, designed to return blood to the heart during walking, is silent. The knees protest because they are hinges meant to open and close, not to be locked at 90 degrees under a desk. The body is confused. It is waiting for the hunt. It is waiting for the migration. It is waiting for the walk that never comes. But listen closely to the silence of the room. There is a shift happening now. The day is done. The screens are dark. The shoes are off. The chair is empty. You are transitioning to the one state that has remained unchanged since the dawn of time. You are returning to the horizontal. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the surface beneath you. It is soft, yielding, safer than the branch of the Miocene, warmer than the cave floor of the Pleistocene. As you lie down, you are performing a ritual of profound restoration. You are laying down the burden of gravity. Focus your attention on your spine. Feel the length of it, from the base of your skull to the tip of your tailbone. For 16 hours today, gravity has been compressing this column, squeezing the water from the discs, shortening you, grinding the facets together. But now the pressure is released. In this horizontal position, the spine begins to decompress. It is a physical expansion. The intervertebral discs, those thirsty sponges of cartilage, begin to drink. They draw fluid from the surrounding tissues, swelling, plumping, pushing the vertebrae apart. You are literally growing. You are regaining the height you lost during the day. This process, called imbibition, is the silent nightly repair crew of the back. It is the reason we must sleep. Our spine needs the darkness to refill its shock absorbers for tomorrow's walk. Feel the muscles of your lower back, the erector spinae, the quadratus lumborum. These are the soldiers that have stood guard all day, fighting the pull of the earth to keep you upright. Feel them acknowledge the support of the bed. They can let go. They do not need to fire. The guy wires of the mast go slack. The tension melts into the mattress. The ache, which is merely a memory of the sacrifice of bipedalism, begins to fade into a dull, warm hum of recovery. Move your awareness to your legs. Feel the heaviness of the thigh bones, the femurs. These are the strongest bones in the body, the pillars that carried the species out of Africa. Feel the knees, unbent and open. Feel the calves, soft and relaxed, and the feet, the weary travelers. The arches that have acted as springs thousands of times today finally rest. The plantar fascia, that tight bowstring on the bottom of the foot, softens. The toes, perhaps curled from the confinement of shoes, return to their natural spacing. The blood flows easily now, no longer fighting the uphill battle against gravity to return to the heart. The entire circulatory system sighs in relief as the body levels out. It is in this state, this horizontal surrender, that we reconnect with our deepest ancestry. When we lie down, we are no longer the unique, upright human. We are the aquatic creature floating in the ancient sea. We are the reptile sunning on the rock. We are the mammal sleeping in the den. We return to the universal posture of rest. There is a specific comfort in curling up, drawing the knees slightly toward the chest, rounding the back, tucking the chin. This is the fetal position. But in the language of deep time, it is also the arboreal position. It is the shape of the ape in the night nest. By rounding the spine, we open the spaces between the vertebrae, mechanically relieving the pressure on the nerves. We intuitively return to the C curve of our primate past to heal the S curve of our human present. We retreat into the geometry of the womb and the tree to recover from the geometry of the savanna. As you drift deeper into relaxation, you may experience a sudden jerking sensation, a twitch of the leg or a jolt of the whole body. This is the hypnic jerk. It is a startle response that pulls you back from the edge of sleep. Science calls it a random firing of nerves. But the poetic anthropologist knows better. It is a ghost story told by the brain. It is a vestigial reflex from the millions of years we spent sleeping in the canopy. In the trees, to relax completely was to risk falling. The brain, sensing the muscles going limp as you enter sleep, misinterprets the relaxation as a fall. It sends a panic signal. Grab the branch. Your body jerks to save you from a gravity that is no longer dangerous. Even here, in the safety of your modern bed, the memory of the green cathedral lives on. You are an ancient climber falling into a dream. And what of the dreams themselves? When the body is paralyzed in REM sleep, the mind often runs. How many times have you dreamed of running? Running from a shadow, running toward a light, running with an effortless floating speed. These are the persistence dreams. The brain is practicing. It is rehearsing the hunt. It is firing the neural pathways of the chase while the muscles lie dormant. We dream of moving because we are built to move. In the theater of the night, the office worker becomes the hunter again, tracking the phantom prey across the plains of the subconscious, free from the constraints of chairs and shoes. The ache you feel in your back, the stiffness in your neck, do not resent them. Treat them with reverence. They are the receipts of your humanity. They are the proof that you are part of a daring biological experiment. You belong to a lineage of gamblers who looked at the safety of the four-legged stance and said, "No, we will stand. We will take the pain of the back for the freedom of the hands. We will take the vulnerability of the exposed belly for the vision of the horizon." Your body is a museum of this journey. Your tailbone is the memory of the tail that helped us balance in the branches. Your appendix is the memory of the diet of leaves. Your goosebumps are the memory of the fur that once kept us warm. And your upright spine is the monument to the moment we decided to walk. Now the walk is done. The distance has been covered. The horizon has been reached. Imagine, if you will, a campfire flickering in the distance of your mind. It is the first fire. Around it sit the ancestors, the ones who climbed down, the ones who stood up, the ones who walked across the ice. They are resting now, just as you are. They are leaning back against the rocks, their weary legs stretched out, their eyes watching the sparks rise into the Milky Way. They are watching you. You are the destination they walked toward. You are the carrier of the torch. Every step they took, every hardship they endured, every child they carried through the narrow gate was to ensure that you could exist here and now, safe in this room. You do not need to carry the burden tonight. You can lay it down. You can let the gravity hold you, not crush you. You can let the earth support you, not challenge you. Feel the peace of the stillness. The modern echo fades into a whisper. The concrete and the screens dissolve. There is only the rhythm of your breath, the same breath that cooled the blood of the runner on the savannah. There is only the beat of your heart, the same heart that pumped courage into the chest of the walker in the storm. You are the perfect culmination of imperfect adaptations. You are the result of 1,000,000 happy accidents. You are the child of the earth and the sky, resting in the space between them. Drift now. Drift back through the ages. Past the cities, past the farms, past the caves. Drift back to the green silence. Drift back to the water. The struggle is over. The persistence is paused. Sleep, weary traveler. The long walk is done for today. The bones are safe. The dream time waits.